When I came to, everything was white, blindingly white. Before I could make sense of anything, a sharp, bone-deep pain shot through my wrist. I barely had time to breathe through it when I heard a woman's voice, tense and urgent, somewhere nearby. She stood with her back to me, on the phone. "Mrs. Sterling, Ethan's in the hospital. Don't you want to come see him?" A cold, razor-sharp voice cut through the phone speaker. "As long as he's breathing, don't bother me." The call ended with a hard click. The woman sighed. Then she turned around, and froze when she saw me staring at her. After a moment, she stepped closer. "You're awake? Who are you?" I asked, dazed. "Were you talking to me? You don't recognize me?" Her expression shifted, just slightly, into something sharper. "I'm Marina. Mrs. Sterling's assistant." "Who's Mrs. Sterling?" Marina narrowed her eyes at me, already losing patience. "She's extremely busy right now. And frankly, playing the amnesia card just to get her attention? That's low, even for you. Give it up. She's not coming." I blinked at her, still completely lost. Nothing she said made sense. She took another step forward, her voice turning saccharine and scolding. "You and Mrs. Sterling have been married for 5 years. 5 years. And it's been nothing but drama the whole time. She's never loved you. Isn't it time you looked in the mirror and stopped making her life harder?" I didn't say anything. But something about her tone, about her smug little smile, made my skin crawl. I didn't know why, but I hated her already. "Wait. Did you say 5 years?" I bolted into the bathroom attached to the hospital room. The man in the mirror was me, but older. More hardened. There was a weight in his eyes I didn't recognize. A shadow that hadn't been there before. Everything Marina said. Could it be true? Was this really 5 years later? Was I actually married? As surreal as it felt, the answer was yes. Not only was I married, but I had been for 5 whole years. This wasn't a dream. I had lost my memory. Right now, my memory is frozen at 18, freshman year of college. Back then, I had a hopeless crush on an upperclassman named Vivian. She was flawless. The kind of girl who could walk into any room and silence it, gorgeous, brilliant, and born into the kind of family that held boardroom meetings in their dining room. An ice queen, if ever there was one. But she wasn't older than me. Not really. She'd started college early, skipped grades. Technically, she was my senior, but she was actually younger by a few years. And now, apparently, I'm married to her. According to Marina, we got married when I was 22. A shotgun wedding. No love, no ceremony. Just signed papers and done. I was still in college. Didn't even have my diploma yet. After the marriage, it didn't take long to realize Vivian's heart wasn't in it. Not with me, at least. But she was very close, suspiciously close, with a guy named Caleb. Her so-called best friend. But from what I've gathered, Caleb wasn't just a friend. He was the ex. The one she never got over. The one she would have married in a heartbeat if things had gone her way. And me? I was just the guy in her way. I turned into a wreck. Tried everything to get her attention, loud, wild, ridiculous things. Desperate stunts to make her look at me, talk to me, care. But all I got in return was her growing disgust. Her friends saw me as a cautionary tale. A punchline. They'd whisper behind wine glasses and wait to see how long it'd take before Vivian dumped me for good. And Caleb? Caleb never even pretended to respect me. He came from money, charm, and that untouchable social circle. To him, I was the drama. The mess. The fool flailing around for a woman who never wanted him. Eventually, I did the unthinkable. I threatened to end my life if Vivian didn't cut Caleb off completely. And she looked me in the eye, and told me to go ahead. So I closed mine. That's the last thing I remember before I woke up in that hospital room. The whole thing feels surreal. Because the person who did all that? That isn't me. That's not something I would do. I hate guys like that, emotional blackmail, messy drama, begging for attention. That's not me. That's never been me. And I don't fall for women like that, either. By the time I'd pieced together what happened, I was already back in the master bedroom of what I now understood was our home. The doctor said I was physically fine. So Marina, helpful as ever, dumped me at the door like a returned package. Before leaving, she offered one final note, a warning wrapped in condescension. Please don't start again. I didn't reply. I was too busy staring at the damn house. The place was absurd. Like stepping into a magazine spread about old money. Even the walk-in closet was bigger than the apartment I grew up in. I wandered into the bedroom, our bedroom, still in a daze, my head spinning with disbelief. And then I heard the sound of the front door opening. I turned instinctively. And there she was. Vivian. Standing in the doorway. Face cold as ice. Eyes like winter. And suddenly, I was face to face with the woman I supposedly married. Even though I now knew Vivian and I had been married for 5 years, this, standing here, seeing her face this close, felt like the first time. And damn. There was a reason I'd fallen for her back in college. She didn't have to smile. She didn't even have to speak. Just existing in front of me made my mood lift, like sunlight sneaking through a storm cloud. Even with that expression, cold, guarded, distant, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Which, unfortunately, gave a little more credibility to Marina's version of events. Vivian's brows drew together slightly when she noticed I wasn't speaking. Ethan, what are you doing now? Her voice was sharp. Controlled. The way a CEO might talk to an assistant who just spilled coffee on a contract. She walked past me without pause, her heels clicking softly against the floor as she made her way into the walk-in closet. A moment later, she came out holding a silk robe. I turned my head slightly to follow her with my eyes. Doing now? Seriously? I hadn't even opened my mouth since she got here, and she was already accusing me of causing trouble? Vivian gave me a side glance, her dark eyes glinting. What, a new strategy now? You used to throw yourself at me the moment I walked through the door. Is this you trying to switch it up? I blinked. That was how I used to behave. Jesus. I must have been really desperate. Still, I kept my voice steady. Detached. Don't worry. That won't be happening anymore. I expected her to be relieved. Instead, her brow furrowed even deeper. She looked irritated. Almost suspicious. I've been working non-stop. I don't have the energy to play whatever new game this is, she snapped. I didn't respond. What was there to say? She stared at me for a second longer, then her expression hardened into something colder. Sharper. And Ethan, don't start anything with Caleb again. He hasn't done anything wrong. And I don't care how far you're willing to go. Your threats won't change anything. That caught me off guard. She wasn't just brushing me off. She was defending him. I stood there, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. Marina had already told me most of it. I'd spent years loving Vivian. Vivian had spent years loving Caleb. And me? I'd become the fool in the middle. Loud, petty, clawing at the wrong man to get the wrong woman's attention. Every move I made just pushed her further away. And every time I went after Caleb, I became more of a joke. This whole mess? It started, once again, because I couldn't stand the way Vivian bent over backward for Caleb. I'd snapped. Behind the scenes, I went after his company with everything I had, smearing their artists, sabotaging their press. Anything to knock him down a peg. But Vivian didn't hesitate for a second before stepping in. She defended him. Publicly. Loudly. She made it crystal clear to everyone in their orbit that I, her husband, was nothing more than a placeholder. That Caleb mattered more to her than I ever could, hell, maybe more than her entire marriage. And I lost it. In some pathetic attempt to win her back, I decided to push things further than ever before. We all know how that turned out. Vivian wasn't the type to come running because someone made a scene. She didn't do pity. Or guilt. All my desperate theatrics did was make her even more tired of me. So when I stayed silent, she didn't bother pressing. Just turned on her heel and walked into the bathroom. The moment the door shut, I collapsed backward onto the massive bed, exhaling hard. My brain was scrambled. There were years missing. Whole years of choices, feelings, spirals I couldn't remember. 18-year-old me would have spit on the man I apparently became. Back then, I hated guys who begged for love. Who threw tantrums over unrequited feelings. Who made fools of themselves for women who clearly didn't care. And now? I'd become that guy. The joke. I stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out my next move, but before I could string a single coherent thought together, the comforter beside me lifted. And a warm, soft body slipped into the bed beside mine. A rush of perfume hit me like a wave. My spine went rigid. I turned, and there she was. Vivian. Lying next to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her black eyes locked onto mine, still cold, but with something else buried beneath. Something darker. Heavier. I stammered. "What are you doing?" Because from everything I'd gathered so far, we weren't close. We barely got along. Hell, we might not even be sleeping in the same room. But now she was here. In my bed. Without a word. And then, she moved. Without a hint of hesitation, she slid her arm around my waist, her body pressing into mine like it belonged there. No words. Just action. Fingers trailing down my chest like they'd done it 100 times before. My breath caught in my throat. It felt unfamiliar. But terrifyingly easy. Like muscle memory I didn't know I had. Vivian. I blurted her name, too loud, too sharp. And then I shoved her hand away. "Don't touch me." Maybe it was the way I recoiled, how genuine my reaction was, how involuntary, that made her hesitate for a moment. Vivian's eyes flickered with something unreadable. But it vanished almost instantly, replaced by her signature exasperation. "Ethan, stop throwing tantrums." There it was again, that tone. That condescending, dismissive tone she always used with me. Like I was some unruly child, not the man she'd vowed to spend her life with. And for the first time since waking up in this strange version of my life, even her face, the same one I'd worshipped from afar all those years ago, started to lose its shine. I sat up, jaw tight. "I'm your husband, aren't I? I ended up in the hospital, Vivian. You didn't say one damn word of concern when you walked in the door, and now you're lying here accusing me like I did something wrong? What gives you the right to treat me like this?" That hit a nerve. Her whole body stiffened. Then, slowly, she grabbed my wrist, right over the bandaged wound, and tightened her grip, her voice low and sharp. "Because you did this to yourself." She didn't squeeze hard. Just enough to hit the injured spot. Enough to sting. I gritted my teeth but didn't let a sound slip out. Vivian stared at me for a second longer, then, with an almost bored expression, released my wrist and turned away, lying on her side with her back to me. Her voice was icy. "This time, I'll let it go. But don't ever use that again to manipulate me. I don't care if you live or die, just don't drag me into it. I lay there, beside the woman I supposedly loved, my chest full of emotions I couldn't even name. Regret. Resentment. Confusion. Shame. The next morning, she was already gone when I opened my eyes. I pulled on whatever clothes I could find and made my way downstairs, still half in a fog. Vivian was seated at the long dining table, calmly eating breakfast like she hadn't delivered a verbal gut punch the night before. The butler, Mr. Whittaker, apparently, stood nearby. He gave me a courteous nod. "Good morning, Mr. Clark." I stood frozen at the foot of the stairs. Vivian didn't even glance up. "Sit down. Eat." The table was laid out like we were hosting a brunch for foreign diplomats. I tried not to gape at the spread: fruit platters, croissants, smoked salmon, avocado toast, and a pitcher of fresh squeezed juice so bright it looked photoshopped. Jesus, I thought. So this is what money looks like before 9 a.m. I sat across from Vivian just as Mr. Whittaker placed a small porcelain bowl in front of me. "Chia pudding, topped with mango," he announced with quiet pride. I stared at the bowl. Then at him. Then at Vivian. "You've got to be kidding me. What grown man eats mango chia pudding for breakfast?" The scent of mango hit me like a wave, cloying and too sweet. I immediately scowled. "Why is there mango in this?" Mr. Whittaker stepped in with polite precision. "Mr. Caleb had it specially delivered, it's his favorite. Came in yesterday, flown straight from that famous restaurant in Los Angeles." Just like that, my appetite vanished. I set the silverware down with a sharp clink against the porcelain. "I'm not eating it." The sound rang through the quiet dining room like a shot. Vivian finally looked up from her plate, her voice flat. "Ethan, stop being dramatic. That hit a nerve." I looked her dead in the eye. "Me not eating mango is somehow a problem for you now?" Her gaze chilled instantly, eyes sharp as glass. "You're not rejecting the mango. You're rejecting him. You're just pissed it came from Caleb, and now you're making a scene." I went quiet for a beat. Was I jealous? Probably. But it wasn't just about that. I didn't know what version of Ethan she'd been living with for the past few years, but clearly, in her mind, I was the jealous type. Small. Petty. Insecure. Maybe I had become that man. But even so, we were married. For 5 years. And yet she didn't even know I was allergic to mango? I opened my mouth to say something, but Mr. Whittaker's voice interrupted, bright and far too cheerful. "Mr. Caleb is here." A smooth voice followed immediately. "Vivian, I hope I'm not intruding." And there he was. Tall. Handsome. Effortlessly polished. The kind of man who walked into a room like he owned it, but made you feel like you did. Even the staff lit up at the sight of him. Mr. Whittaker, the maids, everyone relaxed in a way they never did around me. One look, and I knew. This was Caleb. And based on Mr. Whittaker's tone, the casual warmth, the familiarity, I could tell exactly where I stood in this house. He called me Mr. Clark. But him? Just Caleb. The difference in intimacy was deafening. No wonder 27-year-old me had spiraled. I was her husband, on paper, at least, but I'd never once come close to the pedestal she kept Caleb on. I wasn't even in the same zip code. And to make it worse, he wasn't just her ex. He was the ex she still cared about. The one she never really let go of. No man alive would be fine with that. Caleb turned to me, polite and smooth as ever. "Mr. Clark, I heard you were in the hospital. Are you feeling any better?" I gave him the smallest possible glance. Then scoffed through my nose. Didn't even bother with a real answer. I didn't know exactly what kind of man I'd become by 27. Maybe I was pathetic. Maybe I'd bent so far for Vivian that I'd snapped, let them walk all over me because I loved her too much to push back. But that wasn't me. Not anymore. Because right now, I was 18 again. And I didn't love Vivian. Which meant I didn't owe anyone my silence. Caleb turned to Vivian with a sheepish smile, lowering his voice like he was the bigger man trying to de-escalate. Vivian, I think maybe I shouldn't have come. Mr. Clark doesn't seem happy to see me. I didn't hesitate. If you knew that, why did you come? I said flatly. To watch me unravel? Or just to enjoy the show? His face flushed, quick and deep. Vivian snapped her head toward me, her tone sharp as a slap. Ethan. Don't start. She didn't defend me. She defended him. The irritation burned in my gut. Whatever affection I had for her, leftover crush residue from college, dropped another few stories down. When I first woke up, the idea of being married to my longtime goddess had actually thrilled me. For a second, I thought I was lucky. But now? Now I saw her for who she really was. So what if she was gorgeous? So what if she came from money? None of it mattered if she treated her husband like an embarrassment she couldn't wait to shake off. If she was going to act like she married beneath her, then maybe she should have had the guts not to marry me at all. While I sat stewing, Caleb adjusted his tie like a damn diplomat. The real reason I came was to invite Vivian to my celebration party tonight. Then he paused, realizing how that sounded. Realizing I was standing right there. And clearly scrambling to clean it up, he added, "You're welcome to join too, Mr. Clark." I wasn't going to go. Not originally. But then I caught the flicker in Caleb's eyes, just a shade of smugness, that quiet little challenge men give each other when women aren't watching. So I smiled. Of course, I said smoothly. I'm Vivian's husband, after all. Wouldn't be right for her to go without me, would it? So that's how I ended up tagging along to Caleb's victory party. When the three of us walked into the private suite together, the energy in the room shifted like we dragged in a thunderstorm. People stared. Whispers flew like gnats around fruit. Wait, she brought him? Why am I not surprised? He's always making a scene, acts like Vivian belongs to him. Hates every guy within 5 feet of her, especially Caleb. Didn't he literally try to off himself over this? Oh, 100%. But honestly, what did he expect? The only reason he even got to marry Vivian was because he lucked into it. She's way out of his league. And Caleb? Caleb's in a whole different universe. That guy's been in her life forever, he actually matters. They weren't even trying to whisper properly. Every word was pitched just loud enough for me to hear. Of course it was. And as I stood there, surrounded by expensive champagne, fake smiles, and Vivian's perfectly curated circle, I realized something. This was my reputation. This was how they all saw me. A joke. I swept my gaze across the room. Most of them were probably friends of Vivian's. Or Caleb's. Same thing, really. Same circle. Same vibe. All polished smiles and knives behind the teeth. I almost laughed. No wonder the 27-year-old me broke down. If this was his daily soundtrack, constant humiliation, whispered insults, always being the outsider, how could he not crack? And if he really did love Vivian as much as they said, it must have hurt like hell. Dying a little more each day in a marriage where he was the punchline. Vivian and Caleb had already taken their seats, tucked neatly into the 2 empty chairs that had clearly been reserved for them. No one had saved one for me. So I stood there. Alone. Isn't he embarrassed, just standing there like that? Embarrassed? Please. As long as he gets to be near Vivian, you could make him crawl and he'd thank you for it. I turned my head slowly toward the guy running his mouth. Looked him dead in the eyes. She's not dead. Why would I be on my knees? He blinked, visibly startled. Probably didn't expect me to bite back. Vivian gave a tired sigh. Enough. Can we not do this right now? Of course she wasn't defending me. Even when people were dragging me through the dirt at her party, she couldn't be bothered. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. Seems like I'm not exactly welcome here. I'll get out of your way. Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel and walked out. Behind me, I heard the collective gasp. Did I hear that right? He snapped at Vivian. He must be losing it. Caleb must have really messed him up this time. I'm giving it 30 minutes before he comes crawling back like he always does. Their voices trailed behind me like static, grating and ugly. I made my way outside toward the pool, needing air, space, anything to clear my head. The night was quiet out here, water gently rippling under the moonlight. Peaceful. Until it wasn't. Footsteps approached. I turned to see Caleb, walking out alone. He gave me a smile that was more smug than friendly. Mr. Clark. I have to say, you're full of surprises tonight. I glanced past him, confirming he'd come out alone. My voice was dry. You sure you want to be out here with me? I don't like you. Might just toss you in. Caleb chuckled. I'm counting on it. Everyone knows if anything happened, Vivian would dive in to save me. I smirked but didn't answer. Not because he was wrong, but because I didn't feel like giving him the satisfaction. He stepped a little closer, tilting his head. Ethan. You want to gamble? I raised an eyebrow. On what? There's the pool. He nodded toward it. Looks shallow. But it's not. I looked at him. Then at the water. Then back at him. And said, coolly, if you and Vivian are so in love, why haven't you told her to divorce me? Why are you dragging out this twisted soap opera like it proves how deep your love runs? His expression faltered. Just for a second. Then he straightened, smoothing his tone again. Because you won't let her go. You beg. You guilt trip. You threaten your life. She doesn't love you, she pities you. He said it so casually. Like it was an objective truth. Then, with the same smug calm, he asked again, so, Ethan, you in? I looked at the pool. The water shimmered under the lights, crystal clear on the surface. But I knew better. It was deep. Deceptively deep. I shook my head. No. Why not? He asked. I looked him straight in the eye. Because I don't know how to swim. Stupid decisions only need to happen once. I wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. Just as I rose to my feet, I caught the flicker of something in Caleb's eyes, something that almost looked like regret. Then he shoved me. Hard. Splash. The impact cracked through the air, followed by a chorus of gasps and panicked screams. The water swallowed me whole, fast and merciless. Everything went quiet. Not peaceful, deadly. The pool closed over my head, and cold pressure clamped down around me like a vice. I couldn't hear. I couldn't see. My limbs kicked frantically as I tried to rise, but my body just kept sinking. Panic surged. My lungs started to burn. I thrashed toward the surface with everything I had, only to catch a glimpse, through the shimmering blur above me, of a silhouette slicing through the water. Swimming. Toward Caleb. Not me. Vivian. My wife. In that split second, when both of us were underwater, she chose him. The pain that stabbed through my chest had nothing to do with drowning. Maybe it was the last thread of feeling 27-year-old me still had for her. A leftover heartbeat that hadn't quite died with the memories. But this? This finished it. I went under, mind, body, and whatever heart I had left. When I came to, I was sprawled out on the side of the pool, coughing water, my chest heaving like a broken engine. I'd been pulled out, saved. But not by Vivian. Caleb was next to me, soaked but safe, because Vivian had saved him. Me? Some woman I didn't know had dragged me to the edge. She was beautiful. Curvy. Strong arms pressing rhythmically against my chest, trying to force the water out of my lungs. I gagged and choked, and finally spewed a mouthful of chlorinated water onto the concrete. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Vivian approaching. Behind her, Caleb was still doing his best, dazed and concerned, routine, eyes trailing her like she was the only person in the world. Vivian crouched down, eyes narrowed. "Are you okay?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. I stared at her, at this woman who was supposed to be my wife, who hadn't even looked at me when I was drowning. Then I started to sit up. The woman who rescued me reached out to help, but I brushed her hand off and stood on my own. Vivian stepped closer. And that's when I snapped. I lifted my hand. For a second, just a second, I genuinely wanted to slap her. But I don't hit women. So instead, I gripped her by the collar of her dress, fingers tightening just enough to get her attention, and shoved her hard. She hit the ground. Hard. The courtyard fell silent. You could hear people breathing, holding their breath, afraid even to blink. Vivian Sterling, untouchable ice queen, heiress, flawless golden girl, had never been touched like that before. And certainly not in public. I stood over her, water dripping from my clothes, chest still burning, heart completely hollow. Then I heard my own voice, quiet, steady. "Vivian, let's get a divorce." The words landed like a bomb. "I don't want anything from you," I added, each syllable deliberate. "Let's just say, what just happened was your severance package." I had imagined all sorts of reactions from Vivian. Anger. Shock. Disappointment. Maybe even disgust. But honestly? At this point, it didn't matter. She could cry. She could scream. She could vanish off the face of the earth. I was done. The air around us turned so quiet, it was eerie. Even quieter than before. I could hear the water dripping from my clothes onto the stone floor, soft, rhythmic, like a metronome marking the seconds after a bomb. And I could hear the collective breath-holding of the people around us. They were stunned. This man, Vivian's ever-obedient, always pathetic husband, had not only laid hands on her, but asked for a divorce? Unthinkable. Vivian didn't speak. She stood frozen, the mark on her neck, a vivid, red print from my grip, exposed under the lights. Then, without a word, she began walking toward me. I instinctively took a step back. Something about her expression made my skin crawl. And that single step of retreat, seemed to cut deeper than anything else I'd done tonight. Her face twisted. Not in fury. Not in pain. But in something worse, humiliation. "I already told you," I said evenly, "that shove was my farewell gift. Severance for the end of this train wreck." I met her gaze without flinching. "What, Vivian? Don't tell me the great Ms. Sterling can't take a hit to the ego?" Still, she said nothing. Her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line as she grabbed my wrist, trying to drag me away like a child throwing a tantrum. Before I could react, another hand reached out, slender, elegant. It wrapped gently around my other wrist. I looked over. It was her. The woman who'd pulled me from the water. She was still soaked, her dress clinging to her curves, dark hair dripping down her shoulders. She had a wild, untamed energy, completely opposite from Vivian's icy restraint. Vivian was a glacier. This woman was fire. She looked from me to Vivian, smiled sweetly, and said, "Vivian, he nearly drowned just now. Maybe give him a break?" Her voice was soft, but the amusement in her tone cut through the tension like a blade. I stared at her, momentarily stunned. Vivian saw it. She saw the way my eyes lingered. And her expression darkened, far worse than when I'd shoved her. A storm rolled across her face as she tightened her grip on my arm. "Riley," she said, voice low and sharp. "He is my husband. What gives you the right to step in?" Riley didn't flinch. Still smiling, still effortless. Didn't he just say he wanted a divorce? The silence around us turned frozen. People were hanging on every word now, no one even pretending not to watch. Vivian's glare turned deadly. Riley's smile only widened. Then Riley tilted her head. "And hey, no matter what title I have or don't have, pretty sure I just saved your husband's life. Shouldn't I be getting a thank you?" Vivian's jaw tensed. Then, with visible effort, she exhaled and said coldly, "The Westfield redevelopment project is yours. Full control." The crowd gasped, some quietly, some not so quietly. Deals like that weren't handed out over cocktails, much less handed out publicly. Without another word, Vivian grabbed my wrist again and dragged me away. But behind us, the whispers were already starting to rise. Everyone had just seen the cracks in the goddess's crown. Did she just give Riley the Westfield redevelopment project? That's $100 million deal. Even the Whitman family only got a piece of it, and Vivian handed the whole thing over to Riley? All because she saved Vivian's husband? That hillbilly she can't even stand? No way. Vivian dragged me all the way to the hotel's private elevator without saying a word. She didn't share rooms. Didn't sleep where others had slept. Even in luxury hotels, she demanded a custom-cleaned penthouse suite reserved exclusively for her. No one else. Ever. She shoved open the door and marched me inside. Still holding my wrist, still silent. When she finally let go, she guided me, wordlessly, into the bathroom. The tub was already filled. Steam rose in gentle spirals as the warm water lapped quietly at the porcelain. Without explanation, she motioned for me to get in. I stood still for a beat. "Vivian, can you leave?" Her eyes didn't flinch. Her face, still marked by everything that had happened, remained cold and distant. Like the version of her I remembered from earlier today, only more hollow. She didn't move. "No," she said after a long silence, her voice low and hoarse. I sighed and sank into the water. Let the heat wrap around me, soothe the exhaustion in my limbs, silence the ache in my chest. But then she walked back in. I looked up, startled. "What are you?" Before I could finish, I felt the weight of her body pressing against mine. She climbed into the tub, fully clothed, and wrapped her arms around me. Tightly. Her embrace was suffocating. Like silk ropes tangled around my ribs. Her delicate chin rested against the top of my head, and when I shifted in protest, she just clung harder. Like if she let go, I might disappear. And maybe, in her mind, I would. I was ready to snap, to push her off, to end this bizarre theater. But then I heard her voice. Soft. Strained. Fractured at the edges. "Ethan, thank God you're okay." I froze. It was the first real thing she'd said since the party. But my voice had turned to ice. "Don't pretend. She didn't save me. Riley did." What right did Vivian have to say those words? I would never forget that moment underwater. When both Caleb and I were drowning. And she, without a second's hesitation, chose him. Even without my memories, even without love, my body still remembered the betrayal. My chest still ached with that instinctive pain. That silent heartbreak you feel in your bones, not your mind. It was dull and smothering. Like drowning all over again. And for the first time, I felt sorry for the man I used to be. The 27-year-old version of me, who must have loved her so desperately, so hopelessly. He probably died a little the moment she swam away. Honestly, I was glad I lost those memories. Because if I still loved her like that, that moment in the pool might have killed me for real. Vivian had no words. Her mouth opened slightly, as if something were coming, but nothing did. She couldn't deny it. I don't swim. She saved Caleb. Not me. If Riley hadn't pulled me out, I wouldn't be lying here right now. I'd be gone. After a long silence, she finally spoke. This was my fault, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan, something like that will never happen again. I stared straight ahead, unmoved. Doesn't matter, I said coolly. After we're divorced, you can save whoever you want. It won't have anything to do with me. Her arms tightened around me again, almost defensively. I know you're angry, she said quickly, but it's not what you think. Really? I cut in. Because from where I was drowning, it looked exactly like what I think. She flinched. Then came the line that made my blood boil. I don't agree to the divorce. I turned my head to look at her, my expression flat. And what exactly gives you the right to disagree? When Caleb and I fell into the water, she didn't hesitate. She chose him. She chose him in front of everyone. And I was supposed to just go back to pretending that didn't happen? That my life, my dignity, didn't mean a thing? I'm telling you right now, I said, voice low and steel-edged, this divorce will happen. I don't care what you want. Vivian's jaw clenched, a flicker of frustration flashing in her eyes. But she said nothing. Maybe because deep down, she knew I had every right to be furious. When I stepped out of the bath and collapsed onto the bed, she followed, again. Still clinging. Still trying. She wrapped herself around me like this was some kind of ritual. Sleep first, she murmured. We'll talk tomorrow. I tensed. Don't touch me, I growled, jaw clenched. Don't make me shove you off again. She let out a low, dry laugh. You think you can take me? My eyes narrowed. My body taut with restraint. And then, like flipping a switch, her tone changed. She leaned in and brushed a kiss against the corner of my mouth. Soft. Deliberate. Come on, she whispered, sweetly. Stop being difficult. I was wrong. I'll make it up to you. My head started to pound. Pain bloomed behind my temples, thudding with each beat of my pulse. What kind of man had I become? What kind of version of me was so used to this cycle of betrayal and apology, that she still believed she could kiss it away? What did she take me for? A dog that could be fed and patted back into place? My fists clenched. Then, without hesitation, I shoved her off of me. Hard. Ethan. Her voice sliced through the air. But I didn't flinch. I stared at her coldly, fighting the pain surging through my wrist as I yanked it free from her grip. You happy now? I asked, breath ragged. You finally got a reaction. Something shifted in her expression. Storm clouds, fast and violent, rolled through her eyes. You're serious? She whispered, stunned. You really want to do this? She leaned in, hovering over me, her presence pressing down like weight I hadn't agreed to carry. You don't get to talk to me like that, she said, voice low and sharp. Not you. Then her lips curled, like she was trying to convince herself this was still some kind of game. Can't sleep, she murmured. Then maybe we should do something else. She leaned down, aiming for the corner of my mouth. My entire body went rigid. Pain shot through me like a current. My face went white. Sweat beaded at my temples. Don't, I gasped. It hurts. I didn't even mean to say it aloud. But it tore out of me anyway. I trembled in her arms. She froze. Her hands hovered near my shoulders. What did I do? Did I hurt you? For a moment, just a split second, her eyes flickered with something almost like fear. Like she actually cared. But I crushed the thought before it could grow. No. A woman who let you drown doesn't care about your bruises. I clenched my jaw and said nothing. Vivian was starting to panic now. Tell me where. What's wrong? Before I could respond, a metallic scent filled the air, sharp, coppery. Blood. She looked down. Her fingers were still wrapped around my wrist. The one that had been bandaged. Vivian blinked. She'd always assumed it was for show. A performance. Another act in my pathetic little drama. But as she slowly peeled back the gauze, her face paled. The fabric was soaked through, dark red blooming against the white. And underneath, the gash was raw, angry, and very, very real. Her pupils contracted. Like the truth had finally, violently, hit her. Ethan. I locked eyes with her, voice calm and clear. You still care whether I live or die? I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just asked the question like it was math. You watched me drown tonight, I said, flatly. And you swam to him. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Something in her eyes, something cold and calculating, sputtered out. She looked away. I'll call the doctor, she whispered hoarsely. I'll have them come look at your wrist. Minutes later, the suite door opened again. Not just the doctor. Caleb. Now clean and polished, hair slicked back in a perfect, intentional wave. Dressed in a new suit, all effortless confidence and practiced charm. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a cologne ad, charming, smug, and utterly pleased with himself. And for some reason, he was here, too. Caleb lingered in the doorway, posture stiff but face composed. Vivian, is he okay? Vivian didn't look at him. She nodded once, slow and heavy. You should go home. This isn't your place. He hesitated, then let out a soft, regretful sigh, like he was auditioning for the role of the noble gentleman. I just feel responsible, he said. After all, you only jumped in because of me. And that almost got Mr. Clark killed. I cut in, voice cold as steel. You really are good at this. Caleb's jaw twitched. I didn't stop. Too bad there weren't any cameras by the pool, I said. Otherwise Vivian could have heard exactly what you said to me right before you pushed me in. His face darkened. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Tight-lipped. Calculating. Because he knew I was right. And worse, he didn't know what I was going to say next. In the end, Caleb left in a hurry. He'd gotten away with this kind of manipulation for years, playing both sides, twisting words just enough to stay in Vivian's good graces. But I wasn't biting anymore. Not the way the old Ethan did. Every time he tried to bait me, I hit back with blunt truth. No hesitation. No flinching. He couldn't keep up. Couldn't figure out how I'd suddenly changed. And if he stayed any longer, he risked giving himself away. So he ran. Fine by me. The less I had to see of either of them, the better. Vivian looked at me for a long moment. Something unreadable behind her eyes. You should rest, she finally said. I'll come back tomorrow. I nodded. Bring the divorce papers with you. Or don't. I'll have a lawyer draft them myself. I didn't care about the money. She probably had more wealth tied up in shell companies and trust funds than I could ever wrap my head around. If she drafted the settlement, at least I wouldn't have to deal with her acting like I was after a payday. Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. Then she turned toward the door. I'm not divorcing you, she said. And with that, she shut the door behind her. I could tell she knew staying any longer would just piss me off. Not long after, I got a text from her. She told me to stay put and wait for her tomorrow. I stared at the screen for a second. The tone was still cold. Still commanding. But what really caught my attention wasn't the message. It was the fact that I couldn't even unlock my own phone. I'd entered my birthday. Access denied. Frowning, I tried again, Vivian's birthday. The screen unlocked immediately. I laughed. Bitterly. What kind of idiot sets his phone password to someone else's birthday? Apparently, 27-year-old me. Rolling my eyes, I went into the settings and reset the passcode. To my birthday. To something that actually belonged to me. The next morning, I didn't wait for Vivian. I reached out to Riley instead. "This is Ethan," I said as soon as she picked up. "You free to grab a drink?" There was a slight rasp to her voice when she answered, a little husky, maybe from just waking up, but still laced with that trademark smirk I could almost hear through the phone. "What's the occasion?" "I owe you," I said simply. "You saved my life yesterday. Least I can do is say thank you properly. That's the kind of person I am, black and white. Grateful when it's due. Unforgiving when it's not." Honestly, I couldn't wrap my head around who I'd become at 27. What kind of man lets himself get dragged through hell for someone who wouldn't even lift a finger for him? "All right," she said. We picked a spot not far from the hotel, a little cafe tucked on the quieter side of the block. When I arrived, Riley was already there. Sunglasses, black top, legs casually crossed. That same untamed energy wrapped around her like armor. "You're punctual," she said as I sat down. I offered her a slight nod. "So tell me, how should I thank you?" She tilted her head, amused. "I'm open to suggestions." Then, suddenly, her brows drew together. She studied me for a beat, eyes narrowing. "You seem different." I leaned back slightly. "Different how?" She didn't answer right away. I ran a hand through my hair, stalling. I wasn't ready to tell her about the memory loss. Not yet. I didn't even know what our history was. From what I could tell yesterday, we barely knew each other. But that wasn't how she was acting now. I forced a faint smile. Maybe it's the near-death experience. Wakes a guy up. She didn't buy it. "Ethan," she said, suddenly serious. "What's going on with you?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She leaned in, lowering her voice. "We've known each other for years. If something's wrong, you can tell me." I froze. Years? I had no memory of that. Not even a flicker. Riley tapped her fingers on the table once, then fixed me with a look. "Don't tell me you forgot about me." I gave her a slow, crooked smile. Should I have remembered? Her eyes lingered on me, searching, measuring. Like she was trying to peel back the surface and see what was underneath. "You're not okay, Ethan," she said finally. "Something's off. Ever since you woke up in the hospital, you've been different. Is it because of Vivian?" I let out a dry laugh. Bitter and sharp. The fact that you can tell something's changed, and she can't? I leaned back in my chair. Says everything about this marriage, doesn't it? Riley blinked, stunned. "Wait, you're serious? You're really planning to divorce her?" I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring the heat before answering. "You sound surprised." She gave me a look. "Come on. With the way you used to be?" "Of course I'm surprised." She shook her head, lips curving with disbelief. "After everything yesterday, yeah, maybe you should divorce her. But the Ethan I used to know? He never would have even thought it." I raised an eyebrow. She smiled, dry, a little teasing. When you married Vivian, you were obsessed. Borderline delusional, really. You followed her like a shadow. Hated every guy who got within 3 feet of her, don't even get me started on Caleb. I snorted. That bad? Worse, she said, laughing softly. You were possessive to the point of self-destruction. And terrified she'd leave you. It was kind of sad, honestly. Then, more quietly, but she never did. Riley looked off for a second, like she was sorting through the memory. She always acted annoyed, like you were a burden she couldn't wait to be rid of. But no matter how bad things got, she never actually left you. Her voice shifted again, softer, more personal. You know what hurt the most? I glanced at her, unsure where this was going. She didn't give me time to guess. After you married her, you cut everyone else off. Especially women. Old friends, classmates, gone. Cold turkey. A smile that didn't reach her eyes tugged at her lips. We went through a lot together. We were friends. Real friends. Hell, I confessed to you once, and yeah, you turned me down. Fine. I moved on. But friendship's not supposed to vanish just because one person catches feelings. She tapped the table once, then added, you ignored me for years. Like I never existed. Like we'd never even met. I exhaled, the pieces falling into place. So that's what we were. She wasn't some stranger who appeared out of nowhere. She was part of a whole life I had forgotten. She must have met me sometime after I turned 18, when this whole mess started. She confessed. I said no. Then came Vivian. And then, the spiral. The whirlwind marriage. The obsession. The erasure of everything else. No wonder Riley looked at me now like she was seeing a ghost. And no wonder I had no memory of her. Because this version of me, 18-year-old me, hadn't met her yet. After I married her, I became a joke. A shell. A man people looked at with pity or disdain, never with respect. I loved her so much, I lost myself in the process. Cut off every friend I ever had, like they were liabilities. Including Riley. She had no choice but to wedge her way into Vivian's world, through Instagram, of all things, just to get a sliver of contact with me. So I guess you know me pretty well, huh? I said, a little more eager than I meant to sound. Truth was, I was flying blind. Since waking up, I hadn't had a clear grip on anything, my life, my work, even my habits. Riley was the only person around me who didn't seem to want something. And if she knew the version of me I couldn't remember, maybe she could help me navigate whatever mess 27-year-old me had left behind. But I couldn't let Vivian find out I had amnesia. That would complicate things. A lot. Riley didn't press. Maybe she sensed something. Maybe she just knew better than to poke. Instead, she calmly started filling in the blanks, my job, my life, my social circle, or lack thereof. She laid it all out without making it feel like an interrogation. And the more I listened, the heavier it got. The man she described, wasn't me. Not the real me. That version of Ethan had loved Vivian like it was religion. Cut off friends. Burned bridges. Lost all sense of pride. The idea of that made my chest tighten. I was still 18, deep down. And hearing that I'd become someone so, spineless, just for love, made me sick. How the hell had I turned into a guy who couldn't even hold on to his own identity? As I sat there, trying to mask the bitter realization, Riley cracked a small joke, and I laughed. A real laugh. It felt strange on my face, but not unwelcome. And just as I was starting to feel halfway human again, a voice cut through the cafe. Familiar. Mocking. Well, if it isn't Ethan. What a surprise, seeing you with Riley. I turned. Vivian. Of course. And right beside her, like a loyal hound in designer shoes, Caleb. He added, with a knowing smile, must be thanking her for saving your life, huh? I'm sure Ethan would never meet a woman alone unless it was something noble. Vivian didn't say a word at first. Just stared at me, frost in her eyes, arms crossed. I told you before, she said eventually, I don't like you being around her. My jaw tensed. I didn't even try to hide it. We're getting divorced, I said flatly. So how is this any of your business? Her eyes narrowed, just a fraction. But I couldn't stop the anger bubbling up. I couldn't believe the version of me she'd controlled for years. That he'd actually obeyed that kind of command. Cut Riley out. Cut everyone out. Just because Vivian didn't like it. Having healthy boundaries in a marriage? Fine. But demanding I erase every woman from my life? That was control. That wasn't love. Vivian looked at Riley with a face like stone. You saved my husband yesterday, she said flatly. I already thanked you, with the Westfield redevelopment project. There's no reason for the two of you to meet again in private. Riley smiled, calm and unapologetic. A flicker of challenge lit her eyes. Yesterday, she said, you thanked me as his wife. But today? I'm here as his friend, accepting thanks from him as a person. Don't confuse the two. The air instantly tightened. You could feel the tension coil in the space between them, thin, sharp, dangerous. I didn't want to be anywhere near this. I grabbed my bag and stood up. Riley, let's go somewhere else. Vivian stepped in front of me and grabbed my arm. Her eyes were cold. Her grip firm. Where are you going? I didn't even blink. Why do you care? Then I looked past her, straight at Caleb. Why don't you go hang out with your guy, I said. Just don't forget to send over those divorce papers. Because until you do, he'll always be your dirty little secret. Vivian opened her mouth, like she had something to say. But I didn't care anymore. I pulled my arm out of her grasp and walked out with Riley, not looking back. It was evening by the time I came home. If I could even call it home. This place wasn't mine. Nothing in it felt familiar. Everything in my life, my job, my past, my marriage, still hovered just beyond reach. One thing was clear, I needed to find a place of my own. Because once the divorce was final, I'd have nowhere to go. Vivian met me at the door, arms crossed. Her tone was sharp and scolding. So you do remember where you live? That voice, that posture, it rubbed me raw. Can you not stalk me like a parole officer? I snapped. I was out with a friend. That's all. You don't get to question me anymore. The second the words left my mouth, a sharp pain shot through my temples. Like a needle had pierced both sides of my head at once. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the couch, vision flashing with color. Images blurred across my mind, fractured, hazy, but familiar. A voice. Her voice. Not mine. Vivian, standing over me in another time, another argument. Same tone. Same contempt. You were just out with a friend, she'd said, dismissive and cold. What does that have to do with me? I looked up, blinking hard. Vivian was standing in the same place now. Same posture. Same indifference. And suddenly I realized. I just used her words. Verbatim. I stared at her, breath uneven, bloodshot eyes fixed on her face. I had become her. Repeating the same emotional detachment she'd once used to keep me small. And somewhere in the mess of it all, I realized what scared me most. It fit. Vivian's throat moved as she swallowed hard, like she was suppressing something. She stood there for a long time before finally speaking. Me seeing Caleb, it's not what you think. Our families go way back. There are obligations I can't avoid. But I have been cutting down on how often I see him. I stared at her. You don't have to do this, I said. She blinked. If you're only doing this, sticking around, because you feel guilty about the pool, about not saving me, then don't. I shook my head slowly. If you're trying to ease your conscience by not divorcing me, trying to make up for it with pity, spare me. I paused. If you really feel bad, do me a favor, make the divorce easier. Throw in a little extra compensation. She didn't respond. And honestly, that silence told me everything. We parted, once again, on bad terms. I couldn't figure her out. She was still in love with Caleb. She clearly didn't like me. So why was she so against a divorce? Wouldn't letting go of a husband she didn't love just be doing herself a favor? I couldn't make sense of her logic. And the truth was, I didn't want to. The next morning, I packed up and moved out. I didn't tell her. Just left. I found a small rental nearby. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. When Vivian got home and discovered I was gone, she called me immediately. Ethan, she snapped the second I picked up, what the hell is this? What's what? I said coolly. We're getting divorced. You didn't expect us to keep living together, did you? She didn't answer. Just hung up on me. I dropped the phone on the table without a second thought. I wasn't going to chase her. Not anymore. I just finished unpacking the last box when someone banged on the door. I opened it, expecting a delivery. But instead, I found Vivian. Standing there. Her fury barely held in check. My face hardened. What are you doing here? Actually, how the hell do you even know where I live? She brushed past me like she owned the place, her heels loud on the cheap laminate floor. She looked around with obvious disdain, her lip curling. You'd really rather hole up in this dump, just to prove a point? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Vivian, this isn't about proving anything. I'm not sulking. I mean it. I want a divorce. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at me like she couldn't recognize the person in front of her. And to be fair, neither could I. Why won't you divorce me? I stared at her, genuinely confused. Isn't that what you wanted all along? Vivian's eyes flared like I'd said something insane. When did I ever say I wanted a divorce? Her voice wasn't angry, just stunned, like I was the irrational one. Are you still upset about Caleb? She asked, gaze darkening. I thought you understood. I didn't mean to leave you in that pool. It wasn't intentional. I stood still. Cold. Saying nothing. Vivian let out a long breath and stepped forward, her hands gently grabbing my shoulders. She eased me down onto the couch like I was a child who needed calming. Ethan, stop sulking. Come home. What happened won't happen again. I looked at her, lips tight. After everything that had already happened? And now she wanted to fix it? It was too late for that. I brushed her hands off. No. Just get the papers ready. That's all I want from you. Vivian cupped my face in her hands suddenly, forcing me to meet her gaze. Ethan, do you really want to go this far just to punish me? I told you, I said through gritted teeth. I'm not throwing a tantrum. You're really going to sleep here? She asked, eyes sweeping the modest apartment. What else would you have me do? Then, without warning, she leaned in and bit my earlobe, whispering against my skin. Come home, baby. You can't sleep without me. I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Maybe to someone like you, this place looks pathetic. But for me? It's more than enough. And it's close to work. She exhaled, almost like she was tired of playing games. You want me to spell it out? She said. You can't sleep without me. I blinked. Then stared at her like she'd grown two heads. I can't sleep without you. Since the moment I'd woken up, I thought we were locked in some doomed marriage. A man hopelessly in love with a woman who couldn't stand him. But now she was looking at me like we were happy. Like we were just a couple who fought too much, but still went home to each other at night. Nothing added up. Vivian opened her mouth to say something else, but I didn't give her the chance. I stood, grabbed her by the arm, and marched her to the door. Vivian, I've made my decision. I'm not living like this anymore. Not one more day. And with that, I closed the door in her face. After she left, I finally turned my attention to the apartment. It was small. Quiet. Unassuming. But it was mine now. So I started making it feel like home. Not ours. Just mine. By now, I'd more or less caught up with things at work. Not completely, playing catch-up after memory loss wasn't exactly easy, but I was getting there. Slowly. Carefully. It just meant I had to pour most of my time into it. That night, I was too drained to cook, so I ordered something from the restaurant downstairs and opened Instagram while I waited. And there it was. A post from Caleb. A photo, subtle, artsy, low light. Just the faint outline of two people at a rooftop bar. One of them was unmistakably Vivian, even though it only showed her in profile. That face, even half hidden, was too recognizable. Beneath the image was a caption, just vague enough to seem poetic, just pointed enough to sting. If only we hadn't passed each other by. Maybe I would have been the one standing next to you. But hey, there's still time to fix that, right? I let out a laugh. Cold. Quiet. So that was it? He was openly implying my marriage to Vivian was hollow. That I was just a temporary placeholder. That he'd get her in the end anyway. I double-tapped to like it. Then immediately unfollowed him, and blocked his account. While I was at it, I found Vivian's number in my phone and deleted it too. Blocked every contact. Every thread. Every trace. The next morning, as I stepped into the building for work, I didn't even make it to the elevator. Vivian was waiting in the lobby. Her expression was pure thunder. She stormed over the second she saw me. You blocked me? Yeah, I said casually. Sorry about that. Her face softened, just a little. But before she could say anything else, I added, oh, right. I forgot, we're still legally married. You must be here to have me sign the divorce papers. Good timing. I was just about to put in for time off. We can hit the family court right after. And just like that, whatever softness had surfaced vanished. Her face darkened. Her voice dropped. Ethan. Put my number back in your phone. I smirked. Don't want to. She blinked. Babe, she said next, her voice suddenly syrup-sweet. I'm sorry. Okay? About everything. Just add me back. I rolled my eyes. I don't even know your number. That stopped her cold. Her whole face froze. You don't remember my number? Yeah, I said flatly. I don't. So what? I grabbed my phone, trying to unlock it, failing again and again. Frustration surged in my chest. Vivian, what the hell, what gives you the right to? She suddenly gripped my shoulders hard, eyes locked onto mine, her voice shaking. You forgot my number, she whispered. You used to recite it in your sleep. You could say it backwards. My heart skipped. She saw it. The flash of panic in my eyes. The hesitation. I quickly looked away. I just forgot, okay? What's the big deal? We're about to get divorced. I don't need your number anymore. But her expression didn't soften. It hardened. Vivian stared at me, suspicion and something like fear darkening her gaze. "Ethan, what's going on with you?" she murmured. "Ever since you woke up in the hospital, you haven't been you." Chapter 10. My pulse quickened. I couldn't let her figure it out. I yanked my arm free from her grasp. People change. Especially after nearly dying. You want me to come back and be that same guy? The one who trailed behind you like a lapdog? No self-respect, no boundaries? She didn't respond. But her silence wasn't surrender, it was calculation. She took my phone from my hand, ignoring everything I'd just said. She tried unlocking it. Wrong passcode. Again. Wrong. Her brows pulled tight. "You changed the password?" "Yeah," I said, cool and sharp. "Problem?" She looked up at me. Eyes flat, but wounded underneath. "Your old passcode was my birthday." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so cold, still managed to hit like a punch. I couldn't do this. "I really don't have time for this," I muttered. "Give me my phone. I need to go submit leave forms." Vivian stepped back just enough to look me in the eye. "If you want, I can buy the entire company. You won't have to work another day in your life." I stared at her. Was that guilt? Or control? She turned back to the phone. Another try. Nope. Wedding anniversary. Still wrong. She pursed her lips, then tried one more. My birthday. Click. Unlocked. She glanced at the screen for a long beat, then slowly turned her head toward me. She didn't say a word. Just reset the password, again. "Wait, what are you doing?" Her voice was calm. Cool. But with a razor underneath. "I'm setting it to our wedding anniversary. You can change it back." I stood frozen. I didn't know our anniversary. How the hell could I remember it? I didn't even remember the wedding. I didn't remember her. But she didn't ask that. She just handed the phone back to me, like she was daring me to admit the truth. I knew almost nothing about her. Not really. My only connection to Vivian had been a fleeting infatuation years ago, an immature crush I barely remembered. Now that I'd seen the truth of her, what lay beneath that beautiful face, that perfectly engineered body, and her glittering inheritance, none of it moved me anymore. Not enough to justify caring, not enough to make me try. Certainly not enough to make me want to know her again. "You forgot, didn't you?" Her voice sliced through the silence like a scalpel. Her eyes were sharp, hawk-like, her grip on my shoulders iron-tight as if she could pull the truth out of my bones. "You have amnesia," she said. With total certainty. And she was right. Vivian had figured it out, and just like that, the divorce stalled. She no longer had to fight to keep me. Now she had an excuse to stay. "You love me," she'd told me, voice trembling with conviction. "You just don't remember yet." And in her mind, that was all that mattered. "Once your memories come back, you won't want to leave me." That sentence made my stomach twist. It scared me, not just because she might be right. But because the version of me she believed in, the 27-year-old Ethan she wanted back, was someone I never wanted to be again. Weak. Devoted. Miserable. If remembering meant becoming him, then I'd rather forget forever. That night, I came home from work, unlocked the apartment door, tossed my bag toward the couch, and froze. A shadow moved. Vivian was sitting there. Waiting. "Ethan," she said calmly, looking up at me. My heart skipped. "What the hell, when did you get here? And how the hell do you even have a key?" "I spoke to your landlord," she replied, like it was the most normal thing in the world. My patience snapped. "Give it back." I'm changing the locks tomorrow. She didn't move. Didn't speak. She just stared at me with those unreadable eyes, like she was scanning my soul. How much did you forget? I shot her a look. I didn't forget anything. I'm leaving you because I don't love you anymore. How many damn times do I have to say it? But before the last word was out of my mouth, she lunged. Vivian grabbed my arm and pulled me into a tight hold, arms locked around my waist, her cheek pressed hard against my stomach. There was nothing seductive in the way she held me. It wasn't manipulation. It was desperation. She just clung. No games. Just silence, and the weight of her body against mine, as if I were the only thing in the world keeping her from collapsing completely. Don't say things like that, she whispered, her voice rough and strained. You lost your memory. I won't hold it against you. Not now. Then, almost like a threat wrapped in affection, she added, I'll settle the score once you remember everything. I snapped. I'm done, Vivian, I said, the words hissing through clenched teeth. You don't love me. You've never treated me right. So tell me, why the hell would I stay? My breath was shallow. My chest heaving. So what if I lost my memory? I don't miss who I used to be, the pathetic version of myself who trailed behind you like a stray dog. I hate that guy. I like who I am now. I don't love you. I want out. I've always wanted out. The moment I said it out loud, something inside me clicked. It was true. I'd been ready to leave her long before I forgot her. And she knew it. Because in that instant, Vivian's grip around my waist tightened, like her body was trying to compensate for everything slipping through her fingers. No, she murmured. We're just fighting. That's all this is. I already explained, that day at the lake wasn't what you think. I didn't mean to. She cupped my face, her fingers cold and trembling. We've always understood each other. Even without words. That's what made us us. And you know, even if I saved Caleb that day, it wasn't because I loved him. There must have been a misunderstanding. You'd know that, if you were still you. She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine, a deep sigh escaping her lips. You don't remember, so I guess I have to explain everything from the beginning, she said softly. You and I, we got married. And as for Caleb, it's not what you think. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. But she took that as permission to go on. The Sterlings and Whitmans go back 3 generations. His grandfather saved mine's life in Vietnam. Caleb and I, we used to be something. But that ended a long time ago. There's nothing between us now, nothing romantic. I married you. She searched my eyes like she expected to find understanding there. My grandfather asked me to look out for him. That's all it is. Nothing else. I let out a short, bitter laugh. You value his life more than mine. Vivian didn't flinch. She just reached up and lightly pinched my cheek like I was being childish. Then she let out a sigh. So it really is about that, she murmured. You're still mad. I get it. And I'm sorry. I should have explained everything sooner. Her voice caught, I didn't know you'd lost your memory. I didn't want to hear it. Any of it. But she wouldn't let me move. Vivian clung to me like I was the last solid thing in her crumbling world. And no matter how hard I tried to pull away, her arms only tightened. So I stood there, frozen in her hold, as her words kept falling like soft, poisonous rain. I heard someone fell into the water, she said softly. My first instinct was to check on you. But when they said it was Caleb, I felt relieved. Still, he's always been like a grandson to my grandfather, so I jumped in to save him. I didn't realize you'd fallen in too. Just like that, one neat little explanation. Clean. Sanitized. As if she'd washed her hands of the whole thing. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The disbelief on my face said it all. "You don't believe me, do you?" she finally asked, her voice tight with frustration. "Why should I?" I stared at her with a coldness I didn't bother to hide. Everyone saw it. You didn't even hesitate. You ran straight to him. You weren't thinking about me at all. And when Riley pulled me out, you just stood there, like I didn't matter. Like I was invisible. I'm not blind, Vivian. I saw it. I felt it, how dismissive you were. How distant. Her throat moved as she swallowed, then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, not forcefully, not like before. This time it was soft. Hesitant. Like she didn't want to scare me off. It was the first time I'd ever seen her this vulnerable. "I wasn't cold to you," she whispered. "I was angry. Furious. You almost died. And I was so scared that I—" Her voice broke. "If something had happened to you, I swear, I might have killed someone." I shook my head slowly, not moved in the slightest. "If you really cared about me, then let me go," I said. "Divorce me. Set me free. That's the only thing I'm asking for." Her arms didn't budge. "Anything but that," she murmured near my ear. "That's the one thing I won't give you. Not until you remember." I pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "You actually think that once I get my memory back, I'll stay with you? That I'll suddenly love you again?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The hope in her eyes said enough. I laughed, low and bitter. "You're wrong. If anything, this memory loss is a gift. A clean slate. Maybe this was fate's way of saying, run while you still can." I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to be the man I used to be, the man who loved her so deeply it left him hollow. Vivian must have sensed that. And for now, all she could do was keep pretending that time, and silence, were on her side. I'd finally started living like a normal person again, quiet mornings, focused days at work, peaceful nights in my own place. Then Caleb showed up. "We need to talk," he said. He looked like hell. Dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled, like he hadn't slept in days. He was standing outside my office building, right where everyone could see. I didn't want to give anyone a show. "If you've got something to say, make it quick." Caleb gave a short, bitter laugh. "Feeling smug now, huh? Vivian just unilaterally cut all ties with the Whitman family. Everyone in the circle knows, we've lost our backing." I raised an eyebrow. That was a surprise. But I kept my tone flat. "And what's that got to do with me? Sounds like something you should take up with her." "She said she won't help me," he snapped. "You told her something, didn't you?" I sighed, patience wearing thin. "I thought you came to apologize. But turns out you're just here whining about your own losses. We're done." I turned to leave. But his voice cut through the air behind me, sharp and loud. "Ethan. How the hell does a backwoods nobody like you end up as her husband? You get to marry Vivian? Why? What do you have that I don't?" My body went rigid. His words echoed like a hammer inside my skull. I'd heard them before. Back when I first married Vivian, her rich friends had laughed behind my back. Mocked me. Whispered things like that when they thought I couldn't hear. Caleb had acted like he was on my side back then. Pretended to be supportive. Gave me advice. Advice that always, somehow, left me humiliated in front of everyone. It chipped away at me, made me nervous, insecure. I started second-guessing everything. Started worrying that Vivian would eventually see what they saw, and leave. I could see it all now. Blurred flashes, like pieces of a film reel out of order. Not full memory yet, but enough to know it was real. My real past. Caleb took a step closer. I'll apologize, fine. But you have to tell Vivian. You have to. Get away from me. I yanked my arm free, fury burning in my chest. My voice came out rough, raw. Whatever you and Vivian had, I don't care. Don't involve me, don't come near me, don't even mention her in front of me again. Stay the hell out of my life. Both of you. I was just about to walk away when I bumped into someone, familiar, warm, and smiling. A light chuckle floated above me. Why is it we always meet in scenes like this, huh? Riley. Before I could even react, another force yanked me back. Vivian. She was suddenly at my side, her hand gripping my arm, eyes sharp as ice. Back off, she told Riley coldly. Riley raised both hands, amused. Easy. I didn't touch him. No need to panic. Then she turned her gaze, now a little smug, toward the scowling man across from us. Caleb, she said sweetly, why is it always you dragging Ethan into some private drama? It's him dragging me into it, Caleb growled, his glare flicking toward me, until he saw Vivian, and his tone softened almost immediately. Vivian, come on. We grew up together. What happened back there, it was a misunderstanding. Can't you just let it go? Vivian's voice was cool and detached. I've already done more than enough. I don't owe you anything. The only reason I ever tolerated you was out of respect for your grandfather. But don't mistake courtesy for permission, you've crossed a line. His jaw tightened. You think I'm being greedy, he shot back, voice low and bitter. But he had nothing else to say. No ground to stand on. He clenched his fists, threw me one last venomous glare, and walked away. It wasn't until he disappeared from view that I found out what had really driven him over the edge. Vivian had made a statement, public, firm, and impossible to misinterpret. She told everyone about the pool incident. She'd made it clear, there was never a choice between Caleb and me. She never had to pick. She said that if she'd known I was in the water too, she would have chosen me without hesitation. That there was no real decision to make, because Caleb never stood a chance. Her words cut deep. Not just through Caleb's pride, but through the narrative he'd been feeding himself for years. She said it plainly. If I'd known Ethan was in danger, I would have gone straight to him. Caleb was never my priority. He just happened to be the only one I saw. Just like that, she shattered any illusion that Caleb was somehow still important. Not more important than me. Not even close. For years, I'd been the butt of everyone's jokes. The man whose own wife didn't think his life was worth saving. The fool married into money, only to be discarded like trash. When would she finally toss him aside? That was the punchline everyone was waiting for. But now? Vivian flipped the whole damn narrative. With just a few words, she'd taken a stand, in front of all of them, and backed me. Humiliated Caleb. Told the world I was the one she would have chosen. No hesitation. No contest. No wonder Caleb snapped. It wasn't just the business deals he lost, it was his pride, his image. The golden boy of the Whitman family had just been publicly dethroned by the woman he once thought was his. Still, something didn't sit right with me. If Vivian never really loved Caleb, why did I spend so many years treating him like a rival? Why did I believe he was one? Suddenly, memories began to swirl again. Fragments. Flashes. Faces. Whispers. Laughter. My head throbbed, sharp and sudden, and I winced, raising a hand to my temple. Vivian rushed forward, alarm in her eyes. Ethan? Are you all right? You're pale. Let me take you to the hospital. I'm fine. I pushed her off. You just make sure Caleb doesn't show up again. That's all I need from you." Her voice dropped, heavy with regret. "He won't. I promise. I won't make that mistake again." From the side, Riley spoke up, dry and sharp. "Mistakes can be avoided, sure. But not all of them can be forgiven." I glanced at her, surprised by how right she sounded. Vivian, on the other hand, turned ice cold. "That project's already yours. Consider it your reward for pulling him out of the water. But don't push your luck." Riley laughed. "Not politely. I saved his life, Vivian. He can't swim. If I hadn't jumped in, you'd be a widow right now. And this is how you talk to his lifesaver?" Vivian's eyes darkened, her tone lethal. "And how exactly did you know that he can't swim?" Riley's smile twisted into something mischievous. "Oh, come on," she teased. "What do you think?" Then she let out a theatrical sigh. "Since you two are getting a divorce, I guess I don't need to keep quiet anymore. I knew him before you did. I told him how I felt. But he chose you instead." She turned to me, voice light but eyes burning. "So, if you're finally realizing you made the wrong choice, I'd still take you. You've got a second chance now." And in the blink of an eye, Vivian lunged. The two women crashed together, fury unleashed. Screaming. Hair flying. Elbows. Slaps. Security shouting from somewhere in the distance. And I just stood there, paralyzed in the eye of the storm. I'd never seen Vivian lose control before. She was always composed, always cold, untouchable. Watching her claw and slap and scream, that was new. Watching two women go at each other like that, also new. But I wasn't about to get in the middle of it. I wasn't interested in playing referee. Let them fight. Immature fools. Shaking my head, I turned around and went back to the office. I figured that was the end of it. But Vivian was faster than I gave her credit for. By the time I got downstairs, she was already waiting at the curb. A dark bruise bloomed along the edge of her lip. When she saw me, her whole face lit up. "I'll come pick you up after work," she said, like nothing had happened. I stared at the bruise. She noticed, flinched, and turned her head slightly away. "I'm fine," she said. "Don't worry. She looks way worse than I do." I let out a low laugh. "Who said I was worried about you? Don't flatter yourself." Something flickered behind her eyes. But she didn't back down. "I'll be here when you're off." I felt my patience crack. "I told you, I want a divorce. What part of that do you not understand?" Her lips parted, and for the first time, she looked genuinely hurt. She lowered her voice. "You only say that because you don't remember how much you loved me. But once you do, once the memories come back. Why the hell would I want them to come back?" I cut her off, my voice sharp. "You think I'd just forget the pain? Forget how worthless you made me feel? You think if I remembered, I'd go back to being that pathetic guy, groveling at your feet, waiting for your scraps of affection?" Her throat worked as she tried to swallow something down. "That's not what I stepped closer. My voice was quieter now, but no less fierce. "When I first woke up, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know anything. And when they told me you were my wife, I was happy. I thought, God, what luck. She must be amazing. Smart, kind, strong." I met her eyes dead on. "I wanted to believe you were someone worth remembering." "Vivian," I said quietly, "I've always believed in marriage. I thought if I ever got married, it'd be to someone kind. Someone who made me feel safe." I let out a breath. "But I never imagined my wife would turn out to be someone like you." I'm not just disappointed in you, Vivian. I'm disappointed in myself. I used to look down on men who groveled for love. Men who let their partners walk all over them. I thought they were pathetic. And then I became one of them. I let you hurt me. Over and over again. I excused it in the name of love. I lost myself in the process. Since waking up with no memories, I've tried so damn hard to feel something for you. Anything. But all I've gotten is cold indifference and irritation. So what if things with you and Caleb were clean? That doesn't change the fact that you never acted like my wife. You let him hurt me. You hurt me. This marriage? It's not worth salvaging. I want a divorce. I said everything I needed to say. For once, I didn't hold back. No more half-truths. No more pretending. And right then, I watched something in her eyes shatter. Like glass cracking under pressure. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just broke. I turned around and walked away. I didn't look back. From that day on, I refused to hear anything about Vivian. People in that elite circle were quick to switch sides once they smelled blood in the water. Now that they'd heard about the poolside incident, they came sniffing around, trying to curry favor. Some tried to cozy up to me. I ignored them all. I kept to myself, waiting for the day Vivian would finally let go and sign the damn papers. When the workday ended, I stretched out at my desk, ready to call it a night. I even considered asking Riley to grab dinner, to properly thank her for saving my life. But the moment I stepped outside, I saw it. A sleek black car idling right outside the company entrance. Colleagues whispered, throwing glances my way, smirking like they knew something I didn't. I forced a polite smile. And then I saw her. Vivian. Leaning casually against the car, like she owned the street. Flawless as ever, every line, every angle of her face designed to command attention. My jaw clenched. I didn't break stride. I didn't make eye contact. I just walked. Right past the woman I used to love. Vivian walked straight toward me. Ethan, she called, her voice soft, softer than I'd ever heard it. I narrowed my eyes. I had no patience for whatever she was planning. Did you come to give me the divorce papers? Her smile froze for a split second. But then, like nothing happened, she pivoted the conversation. She reached into her coat and pulled out a set of keys. Ferrari. Do you like it? She asked lightly. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Familiar coworkers, faces I'd kept at a distance ever since the accident, were suddenly wide-eyed, murmuring, watching like it was some sort of spectacle. I frowned. I don't like sports cars, I said flatly. But the moment I saw the keys, my heart jumped. And I hated that it did. Because the truth was, I did like it. Even if I didn't remember it. Even if 18-year-old me had zero interest in fast cars and preferred off-road beasts. So this was the real me? The one who once loved speed, power, the sound of an engine roaring to life? I didn't have time to dwell on it. The longer we stood there, the more eyes were on us. I shifted, uncomfortable. Vivian, enough. Let's not do this here. She stayed perfectly still. I had no choice. I reached out, took her hand, and muttered, "Let's talk in private." Next thing I knew, I was sitting in the passenger seat. And before I could even process what was happening, we were at a restaurant. "Just have dinner with me," she said. Her voice wasn't demanding. Just tired. Just lonely. I glanced around the table, wine, candles, fresh-cut flowers. Romantic. Elegant. Painfully curated. I raised an eyebrow. Fine. We eat. Then you'll finally agree to the divorce? She didn't answer right away. A long pause passed between us. Then, quietly, if you won't have dinner with me, I won't give you the divorce. Your call, I muttered, grabbing the knife and fork. The food was beautifully plated, tiny portions, rich aromas, a presentation more artistic than filling. I ate quickly. Wiped my mouth. I'm full. I'll get going. I stood up. Vivian looked up at me, wounded. Ethan, do you really not remember what today is? I blinked. What? She gripped her utensils a little tighter. Her eyes dropped. It's our wedding anniversary. Silence. Our wedding anniversary. I searched my mind, reached deep into the fog of memory, but found nothing. No flashes. No images. No lingering emotion tied to the date. Nothing. And somehow, that made the silence even louder. Seeing her like that, so quiet, so hollow-eyed, I bit back the sarcasm rising to my tongue. Instead, I said calmly, then let's just call this our last supper. A nice send-off. She didn't respond. Her silence hung like smoke between us. But from where I sat, with the soft lighting slanting across her face, it only made her look more striking, her features delicate, almost heartbreakingly beautiful. I knew she was trying to win me back. But I didn't believe there was anything left to win. I stood up. Excuse me. I need the restroom. I didn't wait for her reply. Inside, I turned on the faucet. Cold water hit my skin like static, jolting me back into clarity. The mirror across the sink was wide and unforgiving. I stared at my reflection, eyes locking on a man who had been broken, who had been fooled, who had loved too blindly once. Not again. Don't go backward, I told myself. You know where that leads. I slapped some water on my face, breathed deep, and turned to leave. And that's when she appeared. Vivian. Walking toward me with eyes full of something dense and unreadable. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. Please, just remember. Please. Before I could react, I was pinned. Back pressed against the tiled wall. Her hands gripped my waist, arms tightening like vines. She kissed me. Desperately. Like someone trying to pull a memory out of my mouth. Vivian, I muttered against her lips, pushing her shoulders. Let go of me. But she didn't. She wouldn't. The scent of her, faint perfume and panic, wrapped itself around me like smoke. Her lips moved fast, frantic, but her voice was soft. Almost like prayer. She clung to me like I was the only thing keeping her alive. It didn't work. Because all I felt was restraint. All I wanted was space. You're wasting your time, I said quietly. You think if I remember everything, I'll go back to who I was. But you're wrong. She froze. I know myself, I went on. Even if I got every memory back right now, I'd still choose to walk away. Something cracked in her gaze. Panic surged across her face like a storm front. She grabbed my hands suddenly, intertwining her fingers with mine, gripping so tightly it hurt. You're wrong, she said breathlessly. You loved me. Deeply. We were in love, Ethan. You just forgot. In love? I let out a dry laugh. Is that what you call it? I jerked back, knocking the back of my head against the wall. But the pain barely registered. My face turned pale. Vivian's voice trembled with concern. Ethan, what's wrong? Are you okay? I winced, hand to the back of my head, the sharp ache pounding like a drumbeat under my skull. I'm fine, I muttered, shoving her away. Don't touch me. She didn't leave, though. She just stood there, wrapping her arms around me in that soft, desperate way. Not trying to hold me back, but not willing to let me go. Her breath was hot against my neck. She kissed me again. frantic, fierce. Like she could kiss me back into remembering. And my body, traitorous, weak, responded. I could feel it happening, like my nerves had no choice but to surrender to the warmth of her skin, the urgency of her touch. But then came the pain. A spike of it shot through my skull. And with it, a cascade of images. At first, just flashes. Then more. Sharper. Clearer. Until suddenly, everything returned in brutal, vivid clarity. I remembered. Everything. The first time we met. How we started. How we got married. Every drunken night, every sweet lie, every whispered promise. And I remembered the humiliation. How Caleb and his friends laughed at me. How I stood there in front of her parents, humiliated and small. How her so-called friends mocked me like I was a charity case. And I remembered the fights. Endless, bitter fights about Caleb, always Caleb. Like a knife slowly twisting in the same wound. My chest felt tight, my ribs compressing under the weight of it all. Even amnesia hadn't saved me from this pain. I remembered the first night we crossed that line. It wasn't romantic. It was messy. Stupid. A party. She was drunk. I was half drunk too. She looked at me with hazy eyes, asked me to take her upstairs. I didn't know who kissed who first. All I knew was that the next thing I felt was her body in my arms, trembling, unsure. I couldn't breathe. I was so nervous I thought I'd faint. And she was no more experienced than I was, her hands gripped the sheets like she was drowning. But then, the next day, she was Vivian again. Composed. Cold. Impeccable. The woman who made me feel like I was always 2 steps beneath her. The next morning, Vivian saw me and didn't say much, just one sentence. Let's be together. I'd had a crush on her for years. Of course I said yes. After that, we were just like any normal couple, completely lost in each other. But love wasn't the problem. It was everything that came with it. We were both possessive, intensely so. She once told me she didn't like me being too close to my female friends, and I couldn't stand her being around other men. We were loyal, yes. But then Caleb showed up and everything changed. She told me he was practically family, someone her grandfather loved like a grandson. She couldn't just cut him off, no matter how much I hated it. She had her reasons. And maybe they made sense, on paper. But I couldn't accept them. I'd been insecure about my place in her world from the moment we got married. She came from wealth and legacy. I was just, ordinary. A scholarship kid who managed to get into a good school, that's how I met her. Otherwise, someone like me would have never even breathed the same air as someone like her. And Caleb, he was everything I wasn't. Even though his family had fallen from grace, he was still born into it. Money, name, prestige. People like me don't compete with people like him. That difference, between me and them, began to eat at me. It hollowed me out, until I didn't even recognize myself. I started doing things I hated, checking her phone, controlling who she could talk to, cutting her off from male coworkers and friends. I knew it was wrong. I knew those people hadn't done anything to deserve that. But I couldn't stop myself. I was spiraling. Every sweet memory we'd made was swallowed by our constant fights. I'd walk into a room and feel their eyes on me, her friends, her colleagues, her family. The judgment. The pity. The laughter behind my back. And then came the last straw. I still remember it. We were arguing again, God, always arguing. I had asked her if she ever wanted kids. She looked at me with this expression, like I was something small, something beneath her. She said, "You think having a child will validate you? Make you feel like you finally belong?" And then she said it. If I ever got pregnant, I'd get rid of it. I wouldn't let you use a baby as a tool to secure your place in this marriage. I swear, something inside me cracked that day. I wasn't angry. I was done. Back then, everyone in our circle was saying the same thing. Even if the Whitmans went bankrupt, Vivian would bail them out. I begged her not to. I asked her, no, I pleaded, don't go. But she went anyway. It was too much. Too much all at once. That betrayal, stacked on top of everything else, I snapped. I told her if she walked out that door, she'd never see me again. It wasn't the first time I'd said something like that in a fight. And it had never been real. Not once. Vivian forgave me the first time. The second. But the third? She stopped believing me. She left. Just like that. And then. The accident. The rescue. The amnesia. Now that everything had come back, every ugly, blistering memory, my heart felt numb from the pain. No wonder I wanted to forget. No wonder my brain had blacked it all out. The past wasn't just painful. It was unbearable. I started shaking. My whole body. Vivian noticed first. Ethan? What's wrong? I looked at her, hand pressed against my chest. And all I could say was, you make me sick. Her eyes widened. But the truth? I made myself sick too. I closed my eyes. The room spun. Then, black. When I opened them again, I was in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights. Sterile air. And Vivian, right there, clutching my hand like she owned it. The same doctor from last time was checking my vitals. Vivian saw me stir and rushed to call her over. He's awake. The doctor leaned over, checked my pupils, took my pulse. He's fine, she said. It was emotional shock. The contusion in his brain, well, the impact helped break it up. He'll need rest, but he's okay. Vivian let out a breath of relief, then turned to me. When did you hit your head? She asked. Why didn't you tell me? I pulled my hand from hers, slow and deliberate. And the look I gave her? It was colder than anything I'd shown since I woke up in that hospital the first time. Her lips parted slightly. She sensed it. The shift. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. You. I remember, I cut in, voice sharp. She froze. I remember everything, Vivian. Her throat bobbed, voice dry. Then you don't mean it. You're just upset. I held her gaze. Unflinching. I meant it before, and I mean it now. I breathed in. We're getting a divorce. Her eyes shook, physically shook, like her whole world just collapsed behind them. I'd never seen her look like that. Not once. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. Because for the first time in a long, long while, I knew I was doing the right thing. I closed my eyes and said quietly, being with you hurts too much, Vivian. Let's get a divorce. It wasn't the first time I'd said it. Hell, I'd said that word, divorce, so many times it had lost its weight. Except this time, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. There was just silence. Heavy, final, soul-draining silence. Marina, who had been hovering on the sidelines, finally spoke up, clearly uncomfortable. Don't be so cruel, she said, frowning. She's apologized, Ethan. She knows she was wrong. But before she could say more, Vivian cut her off. It's my fault. I glanced at her. When I first woke up in the hospital, I said, she warned me. Marina warned me. All your friends did. Every single one of them told me not to be ungrateful. To take what I could get and shut up about it. I paused. Then, softer this time, Vivian, do you still think we shouldn't get divorced? That was the last time I saw her for a while. After I left the hospital, I didn't hear from her again. But I'd made myself clear. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was finally coming to terms with it. Letting go. Part of me was bracing for the paperwork, waiting for that divorce agreement to land on my desk like a final breath. In the meantime, my life began to settle. Work found its rhythm again. I kept my head down. Well, except for one complication. Riley. Once she heard I'd recovered my memory, she suddenly decided it was open season again. So you really were amnesiac, she grinned one afternoon, catching me off guard at the parking lot. I had my doubts, but damn, you weren't faking after all. Same flirty smile. Same bold red lipstick. Then she leaned in just a little closer. Now that you're back to being you, give me a call when the divorce goes through. I blinked. We're not divorced yet. She rolled her eyes, teasing. Technicality. I straightened up, voice sharp. It's not a technicality. I'm still married. What you're doing right now, this? It's called being the other woman. I'd recommend some self-respect. That shut her up. It wasn't that I had any lingering feelings for Vivian. I didn't. But I wasn't about to jump straight into something else either. Especially not with someone who had inserted herself into our mess long before it was over. Look, I owe Riley. She saved my life. But that's where it ends. I'm grateful for what you did, Riley. But I don't have feelings for you. Riley's smile stiffened. Damn, no need to be that blunt. Then she gave a little shrug, lips twisting into something between a smirk and a sigh. I was just shooting my shot, Ethan. That's all. I've moved on a long time ago, just figured, with how miserable you looked lately, maybe you deserved a taste of your own medicine. I get it, I said quietly, pulling her in for a brief hug. That's when I caught something in the corner of my eye. Vivian. She was walking toward us. I exhaled, already irritated, and turned to leave. But before I could take a step, she stopped, doubled over, and began dry heaving onto the sidewalk. Riley's face shifted instantly, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Oh, so now she's so disgusted by our hug she has to throw up? Vivian clutched her stomach, face pale. No, it's not that, I feel sick. Something in her voice made me stop cold. Riley turned to me slowly, her expression darkening. Wait, you don't think she's? Vivian's eyes flickered with sudden clarity. A baby. I backed away, head spinning. No, I muttered. No way. I shut my eyes. The world tilted for a second. Because all I could think of was the last time we fought. When she told me she never wanted kids. That even if she got pregnant, she'd get rid of it. And now, this? Vivian saw the shift in me and immediately stumbled forward, voice shaking. Ethan, please. I raised my hand, already overwhelmed. I don't want to see you, I snapped. Not unless it's in court for the divorce. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Then, as if grasping for anything, she pulled another car key from her purse. If you hate sports cars, what about an SUV? You used to like those. I stared at her. I don't want the damn car, Vivian. I'll give you anything, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Cars, houses, stocks, anything I own. Just, don't leave me. She looked wrecked. I don't care if we fight. I don't care if you hate me. I just don't want the divorce. People were starting to stare. I grabbed her arm, jaw clenched, and led her straight to the car. We weren't doing this here. Once we were on the road, I glanced over and saw how pale Vivian looked. I let out a sigh, forcing myself to ask, stiffly, you okay? She straightened up instantly, brushing a hand through her hair and forcing a smile. I'm fine. But her hand lingered near her stomach, eyes full of hope. That shut me right up. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then, slowly, I let the tension drain out of my shoulders and said calmly, Vivian, you don't have to do this. She blinked, confused. I'm not mad at you anymore. Not really, I went on. Yeah, I was hurt when you ran to Caleb that night. That part cut deep. But everything after that? I've been thinking it through. I exhaled. The truth is, we were never right for each other. She didn't interrupt. Just sat there, hands clenched in her lap. You couldn't give me the security I needed, I said. But I was the one who let insecurity eat me alive. I started acting paranoid, controlling. I became the kind of man even I wouldn't want to be around. I gave a dry chuckle. God, I used to hang on your every word like my life depended on it. My world began and ended with you. I thought that was love, but it was obsession. And it was pathetic. Vivian turned her head sharply, voice raw. You weren't pathetic. You were tired of me. I was frustrated, she said. But I never wanted to leave you. Not once. I thought we'd fight, yell, maybe even break things, but at the end of the day, we'd still come home to each other. That's what I believed. I gave a slow shake of my head. That's not enough for me anymore, Vivian. Caleb was just the spark that lit the fire. The real issue? We don't trust each other. We're from different worlds, with different rules. I'll always feel like I'm not enough for you. You'll always feel like you're sacrificing too much for me. My voice softened. That kind of imbalance wears people down. It turns love into obligation. Vivian turned her face toward the window. I couldn't tell if she was crying or just refusing to look at me. We're adults, I added quietly. Let's stop pretending this is some tragic love story. It's not. When we reached my stop, I opened the door without waiting. I'll walk from here. You don't need to take me back. I shut the door behind me, not looking back. As the black Bentley disappeared into traffic, a strange peace settled over me, fragile, but real. We were done. Standing on the sidewalk, I watched the Bentley disappear around the corner and let out a long breath. If she really is pregnant. My voice barely carried past the quiet street. The truth was, I'd always wanted a child. Growing up, my parents had barely been there, divorced, remarried, too busy starting over to care what happened to the kid caught in the middle. I used to imagine that one day, I'd build a family of my own. A peaceful, ordinary family of 3. When I met Vivian, I clung to that dream like it was my lifeline. But the tighter I held on to her, the faster she slipped away. Still, a child. Even if she didn't want the baby, if she gave birth, I'd raise the kid myself. I'd find a way. But she'd never given me even a sliver of hope. The way she talked about it, so final, so cruel, it shattered something in me. Killed whatever warmth I still had for her. I should have walked away like she did. But that baby, my blood, how could I not care? That morning, I went in for a routine scan. The hospital was quiet. The neurologist said the trauma site looked stable now, my head was healing. I tucked the scan results into my bag and stepped out into the bright sun, ready to go home. That's when I saw him. Caleb. I froze. He looked nothing like the smug air I once hated. He was pale, gaunt. Hair disheveled. His eyes, vacant, bloodshot. The kind of look you only see in people who've lost everything. What's that in your hand? He asked suddenly. I flinched and stuffed the scan into my bag. None of your business. He took a step toward me, twitching like he might lunge. I braced myself, shoulders tense. He was in no shape to fight, but madness doesn't need strength. Then he screamed. "I know she's pregnant." His voice cracked like broken glass. "She's carrying your baby." The street seemed to go silent. I blinked. "What did you just say?" He wasn't done. His face contorted in rage, like all his bitterness had festered into something grotesque. "Why does she get to keep you?" he spat. "Why does she give you a child? I lost everything, everything. I'm the one who belonged with her. I'm the one who was supposed to marry Vivian." He sounded like a man clawing at the walls of a reality that no longer wanted him. But his words echoed louder than his madness. "Vivian's pregnant. And this time, it wasn't a maybe. It wasn't a hope or a lie or a dream. It was real. She's having my child." My mind was in chaos. I couldn't even focus on Caleb's manic outbursts. "Why? Why you and not me?" I stepped back, keeping my voice steady. "If you have a problem, take it up with Vivian. This has nothing to do with me." I wasn't going to waste another minute warning off men who hovered around her. I'd spent too much energy believing that if I just stayed close, she wouldn't stray. But a woman like Vivian, if she wanted to leave, she would. Simple as that. "Are you mocking me?" Caleb's eyes gleamed with madness. He took a step forward, his voice rising, cracking. "She dropped all ties with the Whitman family, left me to rot. I've become the punchline of every goddamn dinner party. And now you're standing there acting like none of this is your doing?" I clenched my jaw. He stepped in front of me again, blocking my way. "It was you, wasn't it?" His tone twisted into something feral. "You told her everything. That I sabotaged you, that I pushed you into the pool. You told her I was the one whispering in her ear, trying to pull her away from you." I scoffed. "You did all that? What, are you upset that someone finally called you out?" His face crumpled into something both broken and furious. "I knew it. I knew it was you." Then he lunged. I saw the flash of silver too late. He had a knife. He came at me with a wild scream, his whole body hurling forward like he had nothing left to lose. I flinched, my arms rising instinctively. But the blow never came. Instead, a scream, someone else's. "Ethan." It was her voice. I opened my eyes, and time froze. Vivian was in front of me. She had thrown herself between us, and the blade had found her instead. She didn't cry out. She didn't fall. But blood was already soaking through the fabric of her blouse. She just stood there, swaying slightly, pale as snow. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I reached out to catch her, arms shaking. "Vivian, Vivian." She collapsed against me, and my world shattered into 1,000 sharp, red pieces. But even as blood seeped through her blouse, Vivian kept her eyes on me. Calm. Steady. Searching my face, as if she needed to be sure I was okay. Her hand lifted, trembling toward my cheek, but it never made it. It fell, limp, by her side. "Vivian." I called her name, but she didn't respond. The hospital was a blur of white, walls, lights, coats, panic. I ran beside the gurney as nurses rushed her through the corridor. Her blood stained the sheets. It soaked my hands. I didn't even realize I was trembling. Maybe it was her, maybe it was me. I gripped her hand tightly, desperate. And then, her fingers moved. She gently squeezed mine, voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I choked out. "Don't talk. Please don't talk." Every word from her took something out of her. I could see it. I just wanted her to live. She reached for my face again, fingertips shaking. "Don't cry," she whispered. "It hurts to see you like this. Don't talk. Please, just hang on. You're going to be okay. You have to be okay. Her breathing grew more labored. Don't carry guilt forever, she said softly. If I don't make it this time, then move on. Widowed people don't need divorce papers. A faint, crooked smile tugged at her lips. At least we'd still be husband and wife. Stop. Don't say things like that. I'd never been this terrified. Everything I'd pushed away, all the feelings I'd buried, all the anger I thought had replaced love, came crashing back, overwhelming me. I'd convinced myself I could forget her. I thought time would dull everything. But now, just as my memories were returning, she was slipping away again, this time for good. I didn't want her to die. I didn't want her gone. I just wanted her safe. I wanted her alive. Even if we had to split, especially if we split, I needed her to walk out of that or and sign the papers with her own damn hands. To live. To be free. To be okay. That was all I wanted. I sat outside the operating room for hours, staring at the light above the door. Still red. Still on. Still waiting. Vivian's blood was all over my hands. Sticky. Warm. Terrifyingly real. But everything around me felt unreal, like I was drifting through a dream I couldn't wake up from. Nothing existed but that red light above the operating room doors. Until someone shouted my name. Where is she? How is she? Vivian's mother, Laura, burst into the hallway, breathless and pale. She looked right past the chaos, straight at me. I lifted my head slowly. My voice came out like sandpaper. I'm sorry. The doctors are still in there. They're doing everything they can. Laura swayed on her feet. Her eyes rolled, and for a moment I thought she might collapse. But she didn't. She didn't scream at me. She didn't blame me. She just stared, lips trembling, and said, "Wait here." Then she turned and stormed down the corridor. I had no idea what she was planning, but I stayed. I couldn't move even if I wanted to. Not long after, I saw her return, dragging someone by the hair. Caleb. She shoved him hard in my direction and spat the words through clenched teeth. It was him, wasn't it? I paused, then nodded once. Laura's face twisted with fury. She yanked Caleb's head back and slammed him against the tiled wall. If anything happens to my daughter, I swear to God, I'll destroy you. It's not my fault. Caleb shrieked. It was Ethan. He's the reason I lost everything. I was aiming for him. I would never hurt Vivian, never. Laura slapped him, twice, fast and merciless. The sound echoed in the sterile hallway. You think that makes it better, she hissed. He's her husband. You try to kill him, you try to kill her. I won't forgive you for either. I stood frozen, stunned. I'd always thought Laura disliked me. I'd braced myself for her anger, her blame. After all, I was the one Caleb had tried to stab. Vivian got hurt because she stepped in front of me. But now? Now, she was calling me her daughter's husband, and defending me like I was family. I didn't know what to say. Didn't even know what to feel. Except, terrified. Because Vivian was still inside. And I didn't know if she was going to make it out alive. Why, Laura? Caleb's voice cracked as he shouted from the floor. You used to like me. You used to say I was the best match for her. Laura's face twisted in disgust. Then I must have been blind. Her voice was sharp as broken glass. I did like you, Caleb. I watched you grow up. You were from a good family, I knew what to expect, but love can't be forced. My daughter didn't love you. What was I supposed to do? Chain her to you anyway? She took a step closer, voice rising. Yes, I questioned her choice too. I wasn't sure Ethan was right for her. But at least he has a good heart. And now? Now I see she made a better choice than I ever could have. She turned, glaring down at Caleb, her voice full of betrayal and fury. I know everything you did. We all do. Out of respect for your grandfather, we let it slide. But I never thought you'd go this far. To try something this cruel? If Vivian dies, she spat, you'll never know peace for the rest of your life. She whipped out her phone and called Terry, Vivian's father. I could hear her voice, low and firm, get over here. Now. And tell the Whitmans, they won't walk away from this untouched. Caleb made his bed, and he's taking their name down with him. Caleb collapsed, wailing on the floor like a child in the middle of a tantrum. It was pitiful, nothing left of the once polished air. Just a shell, unraveling in public. Laura gave him one last look, full of sorrow and bitterness. They spoiled you rotten, she muttered. Never taught you boundaries. And this is where it got you. He kept ranting, screaming, completely unhinged. But I didn't hear him anymore. My eyes stayed locked on the operating room doors. Please, I thought. Just let her be okay. Then the light above the doors turned off. My heart leapt to my throat. I stood so fast the chair behind me scraped loudly against the floor. Quiet, I said to the room. The surgery's done. Laura froze. She lifted her hand and motioned to the bodyguards. Get him out of here. They didn't hesitate. Two men grabbed Caleb under the arms and dragged him down the hall, his cries fading with each step. Laura and I exchanged a look. She didn't say a word, and neither did I. We didn't need to. We weren't friends. We came from different worlds. But in this moment, we were the same. Two people waiting for the same door to open. Two people praying for the same woman to live. The doctor finally stepped out. Both Laura and I rushed forward at the same time. How is she? We asked, voices overlapping. He let out a slow sigh. We've stopped the bleeding. She's being stitched up now. But, it all depends on her will to fight through. He didn't say much, but we understood everything. It was up to her now. They wheeled Vivian into a VIP recovery suite. Laura and I followed silently. Neither of us said a word, not because we didn't have anything to say, but because there wasn't energy left to say it. Laura's eyes were red. The fierce woman who had just dragged Caleb through hell was gone. All that remained was a mother, terrified, helpless, holding herself together by threads. I sat at Vivian's bedside, watching her face, pale and still beneath the sterile white sheets. I'm sorry, I whispered, voice hoarse and thick with guilt. Laura didn't respond at first. Then, after a long pause, she murmured, I'd be lying if I said I didn't blame you, but I know this isn't your fault. It's Caleb's. I understand, I said quietly. No matter what happens, I'll take care of her. For as long as she needs. She sighed again, this time deeper. I know about the divorce, she said, not looking at me. I didn't like you much, sure. But I never gave you a hard time, not really. In front of others, I always defended you. Then she turned her head, meeting my eyes for the first time in hours. But confidence? That's something you have to build yourself. If you keep acting like you're not good enough for her, always doubting, always hesitating, then of course no one else will think you're good enough either. I nodded heavily, feeling the truth of every word. Laura and Terry only had one daughter. And they respected her choices, even if they didn't always agree. After Vivian and I got married, she told them she didn't want them interfering. They honored that. Laura had never spoken to me this directly before. And now, after nearly losing her daughter, she finally did. I didn't respond. I just nodded again, this time with more weight behind it. Terry arrived not long after. His face was carved in stone, stern, controlled. "Everything's handled," he said to Laura. "Now we just wait." So we waited. We sat through the night, the ticking of the clock loud in the silence. Sometime near dawn, Laura looked at me and said, "You should go get some rest. You've been here all night." "I'm fine," I said, shaking my head. "I'm younger than you both. Let me stay." She frowned, about to argue. But I didn't hear the rest. A sharp wave of dizziness crashed over me. The world tilted. My vision blurred, then blacked out completely. And I collapsed. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the hospital bed next to Vivian's. Laura was by my side the moment I stirred. Her expression was tight with concern. "You're awake, how do you feel? Dizzy? Any pain?" I shook my head slowly. "No. I'm okay." "How long was I out?" "Not long," she said. "Doctor said it's exhaustion. You need real rest." I nodded, still adjusting to the light, when I noticed the way she was looking at me. Her expression had changed, still worried, but now with something deeper, more complicated. I frowned slightly. "What is it?" She hesitated, then let out a sigh. "Vivian's pregnant," she said quietly. "Did you know?" I froze. My lips pressed into a tight line. I didn't know what to say. Of course I knew. But I hadn't told anyone, and I didn't want them to know either. Because if they found out Vivian was carrying my child, there would be no turning back. They'd insist she keep it. And once we divorced, they'd fight me for custody. With their power and wealth, I wouldn't stand a chance. This baby, this family I had dreamed of for so long, it was finally within reach. I couldn't risk losing it. I said nothing. Laura seemed to catch on. She studied me for a long moment before sighing again. "I won't interfere in your relationship with Vivian," she said slowly. "That's between the two of you. But this child." She looked me dead in the eyes. "The doctors told us, if we can stabilize Vivian, the baby will be fine. And when she wakes up, she'll want to keep it. I know my daughter. We want this child to grow up in a real, stable family." I looked away, my jaw tightening. "The only thing that matters now," I said flatly, "is whether Vivian wakes up." Laura let out another sigh, softer this time. "Ethan. I know she's hurt you. But she loves you, she really does. She just doesn't know how to show it. She's always been spoiled. Never had to work for love." She stood to leave, then paused beside me, her hand resting briefly on my shoulder. "No matter what happens, the Sterling family will stand behind you. Vivian would want that." I nodded, though the knot in my chest only tightened. After she left, the room felt heavy with silence. It was just the two of us now. Vivian lay beside me, still and pale, her breath barely rising beneath the sheets. And I didn't know whether to pray for her to wake up, or for the pain to finally let me go. I stared at her closed eyes, a strange mix of heartache and anger knotting in my chest. "Vivian," I said quietly, "you once said you didn't want this baby. If you wake up just to go to California and end the pregnancy, then maybe I don't want you to wake up at all." She didn't move. Not even a twitch. I let out a bitter laugh. "I thought you said you wanted to make things right. To atone. Lying here like this, is this your idea of redemption? Taking the easy way out?" I knew she couldn't hear me. But Laura's words earlier had rattled something in me. And now, I needed somewhere to pour it all out. "You don't like kids? Fine. When you wake up, you can give birth, and I'll raise the baby on my own," I said, my voice rough. "But she'll still call you Mom. You're her mother, whether we stay married or not. We'll be civil. We'll figure it out. A pause. But I'm not going to stay single forever. Maybe someday, your child will be calling someone else mom, too. I said it on purpose. To provoke her. To see if there was still some spark in there. The truth was, I didn't plan on marrying again. Maybe I'd date, but marriage? No. Never again. How about Riley? I added, voice low and biting. She's loved me for years. She saved my life. She might actually make a great stepmom. Before I could finish, Vivian's fingers twitched. I froze. Just once. A small movement. Nothing more. But I saw it. It wasn't my imagination this time. Vivian, I whispered, inching closer. She didn't move again. Frustration welled up inside me. I'm serious. If you don't wake up soon, I'll. Her eyelid fluttered. I shot to my feet. Doctor. Alice, Vivian's attending physician and longtime friend, was just down the hall. I yelled again, louder this time, and she rushed in with her assistant. After a quick examination, she turned to me, a smile tugging at her lips. She's stabilizing. Looks like she's starting to come back. Don't worry, she's going to wake up soon. I exhaled, my shoulders sagging. Thank you, I said sincerely. Alice was about to leave but paused at the door. She turned back to me, eyes softer than before. Ethan, about everything before. I'm sorry. She swallowed. I used to think you weren't good enough for Vivian. But it's not my place. If she loves you, that's all that matters. I shouldn't have judged. It's fine, I replied, my voice flat. Truthfully, I didn't care. Alice had never been more than a familiar stranger to me. I wasn't angry, just indifferent. She seemed to sense that, nodded faintly, and left without another word. I sat beside her bed, waiting for Vivian to wake up. By midnight, sleep crept in. I rested my head by her side, still holding her hand tightly. The hospital room was cold at night. I stirred, half awake, thinking I should get up to find a blanket, when suddenly, warmth settled on my shoulders. Startled, I snapped my eyes open. Vivian was awake, gently draping a blanket over me. You're awake? My voice cracked with disbelief and relief. I gripped her hand, heart racing, ready to call for the doctor. As I reached for the call button, she wrapped her arms around me and pulled me into a soft embrace. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper as she pressed her lips close to my ear. Don't let my child call anyone else a mom. Of all things, this was the first thing she said. Fresh from the brink of death, and this was what she chose to say. I couldn't help it, I laughed, half exasperated, half emotional. Let's have your head checked before you start giving instructions, I said, gently nudging her forehead with my fingers. Vivian was awake. And that was enough. The Sterling family was overjoyed, of course. Meanwhile, the Whitman family, once so proud, breathed a silent sigh of relief. If Vivian had died, they would have had no choice but to offer Caleb's life in exchange for peace. That was an exaggeration, of course, but in families like the Whitmans, who had plenty of heirs but no real power left, cutting off a future opportunity meant more than death itself. Cutting off a profitable connection was the real fatal blow. Though Vivian had survived, there was no salvaging the relationship between the Whitmans and the Sterlings. That bridge was burned to ashes. After all this, things between Vivian and me grew strange. Not distant. Not close either. Just different. We used to fight, bicker, clash, but neither of us had truly considered walking away. It wasn't until she said she didn't want children, said she'd abort any she had, that something inside me shattered. That was the day I felt myself slip toward the edge. After she recovered, Vivian insisted on taking me to see a therapist. A full psychological evaluation, she said. To understand what had gone wrong. And when the truth came out, when she realized the real reason behind my downward spiral, the look on her face, that crushing guilt in her eyes. I'll never forget it. She looked at me and whispered, "Those were all just words said in anger. How could I ever not want our child?" Her arms wrapped around me, trembling as if trying to hold the pieces of us together. I was scared, she continued. When you said, "If you're pregnant, does that mean you can finally let go of Caleb?" I thought you were just jealous. I figured if I soothed you, it would all blow over. I knew I was wrong, but I kept clinging to my own reasons, hoping you'd understand, without ever trying to understand how you felt. She swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. When you said those things, I thought you saw the baby as some kind of pawn, something to win an argument. And that made me furious. That's why I lashed out. But I never meant it. I never meant any of it. I understood. I'd said cruel things too, words that cut deep, even if I hadn't meant them. But that moment, when she said she didn't want the baby, that wound ran deeper than anything else. "Ethan," she murmured, "just give me a chance." Her voice was a whisper of desperation. I can't lose you. I can't lose this child. Let me prove it to you, okay? Let me show you I can do better. If someday I still let you down, if I still hurt you the way I did, then leave me. I won't hold it against you. Her eyes shimmered with conviction. But please, let me try. I love you so much. We used to be everything to each other. If it all ends here, I can't accept that. And the truth was, neither could I. But love wasn't the only thing left between us. The pain, the scars, those were real too. She cupped my face in her hands. Her touch was warm, pleading. I've been hurting too, Ethan. We're like two porcupines, always bristling, always pricking each other. But I'm ready to pull my quills back. I swear, I'll try. My thoughts were a mess, spinning, conflicting, raw. I couldn't respond, not yet. Vivian didn't push. She backed off gently, staying close, just enough to offer quiet comfort, no pressure, no demands. Just patience. Vivian had just woken up, so I told her not to worry about me, just focus on the baby. She nodded every time, saying she would, but somehow, she still knew everything about my life, down to the smallest detail. At first, I thought it was just stubbornness, that she was trying to create the illusion of a complete family for the baby growing inside her. But later, I realized, in our marriage, I wasn't the only one holding on to resentment. She had her own silent calculations too. I used to think, the way we started wasn't exactly romantic. You ended up with me because of a mistake, and there were so many amazing men out there. I was scared that after seeing them, you'd realize I was nothing special. I confessed one night, the words heavy in my throat. Our status was never equal. I didn't know how to cope with that. So when I asked for a divorce, it wasn't just about you, it was about me, too. I didn't want to spiral into self-loathing anymore. Vivian's face twisted with regret. I never looked at anyone else. I've loved you for a long time, long before that night. You thought it was an accident, but did you ever stop to think? Even drunk, I'd never let someone I didn't like be near me. I blinked, caught off guard. You weren't drunk that night? That memory had always gnawed at me. She'd seemed completely out of it, barely able to stand. Meanwhile, I was buzzed but fully aware of what I was doing. I'd carried the guilt for years, believing I had taken advantage. But now, her words cleared that weight in an instant. Vivian, I stared at her. If you were sober, why didn't you say something? All this time, I thought I forced something on you. She let out a sheepish laugh, almost apologetic. Ethan, I was just a girl in my early 20s. I didn't want to be rejected. That was the only way I knew to test the waters. But I wouldn't do it like that now. I groaned, exasperated. If you'd just told me, maybe I wouldn't have spent our whole marriage feeling inadequate. I wouldn't have sabotaged things out of insecurity. She gently placed my hand over her heart. I know. I was foolish too. I loved you, but I always pretended I didn't care, just to see if you'd chase after me. I knew you hated Caleb, but I kept brushing it off, told myself you were overreacting instead of fixing things with Grandpa. I messed up so many times. Misunderstood so much. If it weren't for your memory loss, I might never have seen how cruel I'd been. That night, we talked for hours. Everything from the past, every misunderstanding, every wound, we laid it all out on the table. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke, I noticed her belly, round and full now that she was over 6 months along. She'd fallen asleep beside me on the couch. Gently, I slipped my arms around her from behind and lifted her carefully, placing her down on the bed. She stirred slightly, arms instinctively wrapping around my neck. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft and sleepy. Then she looked up at me with those dark, tender eyes, and suddenly leaned in to kiss me. I said nothing. I just let myself feel it. I didn't know how long it lasted, seconds, minutes, maybe longer. When she finally pulled back, my face was warm, breath caught somewhere between her and the quiet. Then, with a hoarse voice and a little tremble, she whispered in my ear. "Ethan, can we not get divorced?" A laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. Of all the things I thought she might ask in a moment like that, something grand, poetic, heavy with emotion, this was it? Not a proposal to start over. Not a declaration of eternal love. Just a simple request to, not split up. Vivian pouted at my reaction but didn't protest, just lightly scratched my shoulder like a kitten sulking. "Don't laugh. Answer me." I let the grin fade, face growing serious. That must have scared her, because she quickly backtracked. Okay. You don't have to answer. I'm fine with this. Just, like this is good. It's enough." I could hear the panic in her voice, the crack in her confidence. I sighed softly, running my hand along her cheek. "Vivian, let me think about it, okay?" Because even if the misunderstandings were cleared, trust didn't magically reappear overnight. Not after everything. We were like a shattered glass sculpture, still standing, but only because someone had glued us back together. The cracks were real, and they were still healing. She focused on her pregnancy, and for the baby's sake, I tried to be more forgiving. She was having a hard time, nausea, fatigue, restless nights. But she never once complained. Always pushing through. Always trying. And watching her go through that, seeing how much she was enduring for our child. Yeah. Part of me softened. After all, this baby was mine too. Time passed quickly after the baby was born. I had prepared myself for every outcome. If Vivian turned out to be a good mother, I'd be proud of her. If she didn't, if she failed to meet the bar I quietly set, I wouldn't hesitate to walk away. But of course, she never gave me a reason to. Not even once. One evening, after she'd finally gotten the baby to sleep, she tiptoed back toward our room. As she turned the corner, she found me leaning against the doorway, smiling at her. She blinked, then walked over and wrapped her arms around my waist. "What's with that look?" she asked softly. "Nothing," I said. "Just realizing it's been a while since I last saw your icy side." She let out a breath, relieved, then amused. "That part of me's ancient history. Can we not bring it up again?" "Why not?" I dodged as she reached to pinch me. "Honestly, I kind of miss the frosty version of you. I bet you looked gorgeous changing diapers with a deadpan face." Vivian narrowed her eyes, instantly catching the tease, and chased me into the bedroom. The second she caught up, she tackled me onto the bed, landing square on my chest. Then, breathing just above me, she whispered, "So, did I pass the test, husband?" I chuckled, brushing hair from her cheek. "You passed. But you're still in the probation period." She raised an eyebrow. "And how long is this probation period?" I smiled. "A lifetime, probably."